H News with NPR. What matters to you.
Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The teenager accused of killing 4 people this week at his Georgia high school in a mass shooting has made his first formal court appearance. 14-year-old Colt Gray is being charged as an adult with 4 counts of murder. Georgia Judge Curry Mingledorff initially told Gray this morning that he could face the death penalty if he was convicted. But the judge later summoned the teenager back to the courtroom to explain that would not be the penalty he might face.
You are under 18 years old. So I wanted to inform you and make it clear to you that the penalty for the crimes for which you are charged does not include death.
Gray's father, Colin Gray, also made his first appearance in the same courtroom this morning. Colin Gray is charged with second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter. Authorities claim he allowed his son to possess the assault-style weapon that was used in the mass shooting. Both father and son will remain jailed. Their lawyers did not request bail. Stocks opened lower this morning after the Labor Department reported an uptick in hiring last month. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow Jones Industrials fell about 24 points in early trading.
U.S. employers added 142,000 jobs in August, a modest rebound after disappointing job growth in July. The unemployment rate dipped slightly last month as people who had been temporarily laid off in July went back to work. Still, the overall pace of job growth has slowed from earlier this year, and job gains for June and July were revised down by a total of 86,000 jobs. It's a mixed picture for the Federal Reserve to weigh as policymakers decide how much to cut interest rates later this month. The Fed is widely expected to cut rates by at least a quarter percentage point, but a larger cut is possible if policymakers decide the job market needs shoring up. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Kamala Harris's Democratic presidential campaign says it raised $361 million last month. As NPR's Asma Khalid reports, that number is far more than what is being reported by former President Donald Trump's Republican campaign.
The huge haul the Democrats are reporting is nearly 3 times as much money as the Trump political operation brought in last month. The Trump campaign reported it raised $130 million in August. In isolation, the Trump numbers are also huge, but this cycle, the millions keep pouring in. The Harris campaign says it has raised more than $615 million since the beginning of the vice president's candidacy. And it said that this last month was the best grassroots fundraising month in presidential history. Money, of course, buys resources, but this race for money may muddle the political reality, which is that the polls still show the presidential race remains incredibly close. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow is now down about 100 points. You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Starting today, part of the MBTA's Red Line will shut down for most of the month. Service between the JFK UMass and Braintree stops will be replaced with shuttle buses until Sunday, September 29. T officials are encouraging riders to use the free Middleborough, Kingston, and Greenbush commuter rail lines, also warning that service on those lines will be replaced with shuttle buses during the next 2 weekends. T General Manager Phil Eng tells GBH News that shutdowns are for important repairs that will allow trains to run faster.
Originally, the goal was 40 miles an hour, but there are certain areas where we can improve speeds back to 50 miles an hour to be able to give riders a much quicker trip, shorter trip, and more time in their day.
Once completed, Eng says the repairs are expected to reduce travel times on the Red Line's Braintree branch by about 24 minutes. The massive redevelopment taking place at Suffolk Downs in East Boston and Revere has its first retailer, and it's a brewery. The Boston Business Journal reports that Danvers-based Twisted Fate will open a small brewery in Amaya, the apartment building at the former horse racing track that began moving in its first residents this summer. And Amaya is just the beginning, with 475 units as the first building to open at Suffolk Downs, which will eventually have planned to include some 10,000 other residential units. That brewery, by the way, is on tap to open next spring. Red Sox back at Fenway this weekend for a series with the White Sox. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BritBox, working to help people discover British dramas and mysteries, including The Responder, starring Martin Freeman, and entire series like Sherlock and Vera. Streaming at BritBox.com/NPR.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Governor Maura Healey is going to be with us today from 1 to 2, taking our questions and yours. On Monday, we're going to talk to the MBTA. We just heard about that, the red line shutting down. We're going to ask him all those questions. And
you can call and ask him questions, too. He's going to be with us for an hour, isn't he?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Taking our questions and yours, as we like to say here at Boston Public Radio. On Tuesday, we're going to be joined right back here at the Boston Public Library with Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston, and Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Doris Kearns Goodwin. So we have this new deal going on, this little text segment where we take questions and people call in with their texts, or text in with their texts, I should say. The number is 877-301-8970. Now, we read about this in the New York Times, so people shouldn't get too worked up. We know that sitting is the new smoking.
Yes.
Well, now, Jim, there is another health risk from sitting too much called dead butt syndrome.
By the way, it is real, for whatever it's worth. It's real.
It is absolutely real. I'd never even heard of this. I don't think most of you have heard of it either. But apparently now we got something else to worry about. Do you sit all day at the office? And many of us do. So now that you know about dead butt syndrome, we want to know how you plan to fight off this latest scourge. The number is 877-301-8970. Text us and we'll read your answers a little bit before the 1 o'clock news.
Thank you, Marjorie. For now, though, we're going to continue making sense, or attempting to, of Wednesday's shooting at Appalachia High School in Georgia, which, as you know, took the lives of 2 students, 2 teachers, injured 9 others. One of the things that made this case different from other shootings over the last 20 years is that Cullen Gray, not unlike that mother and father in Michigan recently, he's the father of the shooter in Georgia, has been charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder for allowing his son access to the AR-style rifle. And by the way, unlike much of what we've seen in the last year on Things That Matter in courtrooms, we were able to watch the arraignment of the 14-year-old and his father on television this morning. Lines are open to call or text at 877-301-8970. Do you have hope that charging the parent of a shooter, again, as was done in Michigan, the Crumbleys, and now with this father, Gray, in Georgia, might have some positive impact, might cause some parents to reconsider giving their children access to deadly weapons? And while schools are statistically the safest place for a child to be during the day, I want to repeat that, schools are the safest place for a kid to be during the day. Are you parents out there still feeling nervous about violence in this school year? And how are you managing that anxiety about your kids' safety? And a final piece, by the way, what do you think of the Republican response? This is via J.D. Vance yesterday, replacing the typical and useless thoughts and prayers with calling this, get this incredible violence in Georgia, he referred to as a fact of life. Again, a fact of life. Are you as resigned to the fact as Vance apparently is, that nothing will be or should be done? Or do you have hope that maybe with a new government in this country, that gun violence may finally be addressed? Well, in fairness, Joe Biden addressed a small piece of the action, but in a serious, big kind of way. The number is 877-301-8970. Let me just say, when the Crumbleys, when the mother and father were charged out there in Michigan, I thought it was the first time, I think, in this country's history that that's been done. I think this is a huge and important step in the right direction. I think even if you're grossly irresponsible about guns, as so many adults are in this country, if you think your irresponsibility in your household may lead to incarceration, I think at least some people are going to think twice before they give access, for example, to a 14-year-old son who has thoughts of school shootings, access to weapons of war, Marjorie.
Yeah, well, in this case, when the investigators came to speak to the father and son because of these threats that were reported made by the son online a year ago when he was 13, it didn't seem like the father was really truthful when he talked about having some hunting guns in the house, but that the child had no access to those guns. Well, obviously one of those hunting guns was an AR-15 type weapon, and the child did have access to those things. And it sounds like they were in duress for a lot of reasons. His family just gotten divorced. There was an eviction. Dad goes with the 14-year-old kid. Mom goes with the other two kids. The grandfather said that things were a mess in the house. I don't know if that's really true. But the thing is, if he had kept those guns away from his kid, obviously in a place where the kid couldn't have gotten them. And remember, in some of these shootings, remember the Newtown case, the mother bought the gun for Lanza, the kid that shot all those little 6- and 7-year-olds in the first grade. And in that case, I mean, she was killed by him too, so you couldn't press charges against the dead mom. But in that case, things were so disturbed that mom and child exchanged text messages.
In the
wouldn't
house.
even talk to her. So if parents are woefully neglectful, as it seems like could be true in this case, and I think was true in the Crumbley case, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
877-301-8097. Let me just play this grotesque soundbite from a guy who hopes to be the next vice president of the United States. Here's J.D. Vance at a campaign rally yesterday in Phoenix, claiming, again, the school shootings are just a fact of life.
I don't like this. I don't like to admit this. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets. And we have got to bolster security at our schools so that a person who walks through the front door, we've got to bolster security so that if a psycho wants to walk through the front door and kill a bunch of children, they're not able to.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea. Bolster it like we did at Uvalde. That worked incredibly well. And by the way, he's not just alone. I assume most of you remember the guy he's running with, Donald Trump, the man who attempted to overthrow the government of the United States a couple of years ago. Here's what he said after this terrible school shooting in Perry, Iowa. I want to send our support and deepest sympathies, of course, to the victims and families touched by this terrible school shooting. It's just horrible, so surprising to see it here. Quote, you ready? But we have to get over it. We have to move forward. They have basically said, we have no intention of ever doing anything except talking about mental health, more security at the schools, which hasn't worked terribly well, I think we'd agree, but nothing about getting rid of the weapons that caused this fatal damage. The number is 877-301-8970.
And one more thing before we get to the texts and the calls. The other day we talked about, the first day we were back here, about going back to school and how parents felt about this move across the country to get rid of cell phones in the schools so that kids couldn't get them. Well, there's a whole back and forth in this latest shooting between parents and kids texting their mothers. I mean, this is really tough. Mommy, I'm scared. And the mother's texting back, I keep texting me, I need you to keep texting me. And the exchanges between mothers in this case and their kids. One mother was actually advising the kid on how to protect herself in the classroom.
Well, stay there. That's exactly what we said the other day. A mother who is not there is giving advice to her child to stay safe rather than the child paying attention to whoever the adult is in the room who's trying to keep the child safe.
But again, this raises, I think, the question in a lot of people's minds. We took a lot of grief from parents who said, this is terrible, there are these school shootings all the time, and there is some truth to that. There are an awful lot of school shootings, and we need this to be able to keep in touch with our kids in emergencies. I don't think the hurt from cell phones, I think, in learning is so great, and socializing is so great. I don't think that should override, the school shooting thing should override those concerns, but a lot of parents disagree with me. And they think,
also, you just said there are a lot of school shootings, which is factually true, but what I said was also true. It is statistically the safest place for your child to be, and I repeat, your child should focus on whoever the adult is in the room trying to keep them safe rather than texting the parent. But maybe you feel differently. A lot of you did. Give us a buzz. How do you feel about the father being charged with very serious crimes in this situation? And are you resigned, I guess, as Vance and Trump are, that it's a fact of life? We just have to get over it. And as Trump says, move forward. 877-301-8970. John in Westford, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hello.
Hello to you.
There are a lot of less than lethal weapons out there that I think the school should use. You could have they're kind of like paintball guns. You've seen them on TV. They use them for crowd control. They're very simple to use. They have them in a rifle form. You can get them in a pistol. And it's a CO2 cartridge. It's activated on use. And it will shoot downrange pepper spray balls that explode on contact. So at least that way you have a fighting chance. And I think there should be a few in the office, and maybe if a teacher is licensed and wants to have one in the room, as long as it's locked in the drawer with maybe a magnetic key swipe, at least they'll have a chance.
You know, John, I'm very skeptical. I mean, I think you almost have to, if you want to have increased security like J.D. Vance talked about, you'd almost have to have somebody at every door, every entranceway, maybe in every hallway, with a AK, a long rifle like the shooters have, because they've got these high capacity magazines. They can shoot so many people so fast. It's like, kind of throwing a ball down a bowling alley and wiping out all the pins in 2 seconds. I just don't think you can. That's the answer. The answer is the guns, the access to the guns.
But go ahead, John.
But I am a big 2A guy. I know you don't want to hear that, Jim.
No,
that's okay.
You're entitled. Go ahead. By the way, John, I hope you know there are a lot of big Second Amendment people in this country that don't just support something as simple as background checks, but think that weapons of war, these AK kind of weapons, should not be in the hands of individuals. So being a supporter of the Second Amendment is not inconsistent with gun safety, as you well know, John.
Yeah, that's the thing. There is no such thing in the U.S. as a weapon of war. Every gun is an assault weapon, an assault rifle. Every gun. And then, so like I have a rifle that's legal in Massachusetts. It's not considered an AR because it's not scary looking. It does the exact same thing, same caliber, same rate of fire.
Well, let me, John, if I may interrupt you, you say there's no such thing. Oh, they're all weapons of war. Marjorie just mentioned the high-capacity magazines. Is there any reason for a high-capacity magazine being legal in the hands of a private citizen in the United States, in this country? That is a lot more lethal than a handgun to a layperson like me.
That's the one issue that the 2A people grapple with. Like magazine capacity in Mass is 10 rounds. There are 30-round mags.
Which you can buy in New Hampshire and bring to Massachusetts.
Yeah, John, we appreciate your call. We appreciate a thoughtful call. By the way, we hope you call us again. It just seems to me that's a step that a sane administration with a sane, caring Congress that should be barred from saying thoughts and prayers
I guess
could do.
When you get down to it, the question is, do you want to, and I think this is where we are now, parents are petrified about their kids going to school. Kids are thinking about mass shootings. So I guess the question is, should the whole nation be thinking about whether or not they're going to get shot to death when they go to school, when they go to a church, when they go to Gillette Stadium, when they go to anywhere there's a large group of people? Because some people want to have 30 capacity magazines and go to a shooting range, or they want to feel good about their ability to mow people down. I mean, that's what's so crazy. The freedom of people to feel reasonably secure is taken away by our love affair with
well, you know what it is,
guns.
Marjorie? It's a fact of life, as J.D. Vance would say.
Ron in Seabrook, thank you for calling.
Hello, Ron.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
When I hear people say, oh, the problem is not the guns, the problem is the people. What if you reply to that by saying, all right, let's go into all of the mental institutions. We'll state publicly that we plan to cure all those people. But in the meantime, let's give them some guns and some sharp knives and some suicide pills and see what happens. I mean, it's so moronic to think that you can put one problem ahead of the other and ignore the bigger problem while you fail to cure the problem you say you're going to fix, you know?
Well, that was a roundabout way to get to a place where I'm with you, Ron. The core problem is the weapon, and it's tiresome to say it, no other country in the world allows this kind of weaponry in the hands of private people. Thank you for the call. By the way, we failed to mention that Georgia, again, where the governor and everybody else, thoughts and prayers, as Governor Kemp said the other night at the press conference, in 2022 loosened their laws around guns, not strengthened them, to allow the carrying of a gun by a citizen of the state or a person in the state without a permit, which is exactly the wrong direction to be going in, but that's what they did. Megan in Weymouth, you're on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to say something about the cell phone use. So I'm sorry if it's off topic.
No, it's not off topic at all.
It's on topic.
I learned through Jessica Seinfeld that there's a new flip phone out that is text capable and call capable, but not a smartphone. That's the push to get kids using that phone. And while I agree that the adult in the room, they should be absolutely paying attention to, if my child was in a school where there was a shooting, I would love to get a notification from them just saying, I'm okay for the moment.
But you know,
and
Megan,
then I can get to the...
Go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Then just so you know so the parent knows what's going on.
Megan, I get that. I think every parent feels exactly that. But I guess the question is, again, to weigh one against the other. There's overwhelming evidence that cell phones are screwing kids up. Social media is screwing kids up. Mental health issues, self-esteem issues, learning issues, not paying attention issues. 72% of teachers think this is a real problem for education. So I guess, is that worth the very unlikely still possibility that your child would be in this kind of situation? I mean, you're almost certain to have these kind of problems with your children because of social media, but you're still very unlikely to have your kid in a shooting situation. That's the balance. You know what I mean?
I do. And this particular phone is not a smartphone, so they don't have access to.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. You would be
social.
distracted. You'd be distracted by it and going back and forth with text or whatever.
I understand, like Marty does, the parent desire. I have the exact same desire if my kid was in that kind of situation. The question is, on balance, is that the best and most important use of your kid's time when under great threat? And I don't agree, but Megan, you were probably in the majority, and thank you for voicing your point of view. 877-301-8097. I'd love to hear what people think about charging the parents, too. Again, my knowledge, it's only the second time it's ever been done in this country after the Crumbleys in Michigan recently, and they did it rapidly here, too. What, a day or so after indicting the 14-year-old shooter, they indict the father for comparable charges.
Well, also, I think the other thing was that the father buys this gun for the kid after they have the investigation, where he says, well, the kid may be putting it, and I think the child was probably not telling the truth when he said his account was hacked. He probably was threatening to shoot up a middle school, right? And that's where he was at the time. And we also should mention that they didn't transfer this information to the high school that he went to.
And they didn't transfer it from one county to another, which is also unbelievable.
Right, but I think that was he probably should not have bought that kind of weapon for
you think so?
A kid that was problematic in the first place. It sounds like dad is problematic. That's what seems to be emerging all over the place. We have to take a quick break. We're going to be right back to continue to talk about this. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH in the Boston Public Library. We're asking what you think about the second time that parents have been charged in a mass shooting, and also how you feel. We debated the cell phone issue in school. A lot of parents and kids were texting back and forth in Georgia. Children to say they love their parents to say they were worried stiff and to try to get information about how their kids were. The number is 877-301-8970.
Europe's economic future will depend on attracting more migrants. That's according to experts and many government officials. But lots of European voters see migration as a problem. They want more restrictions on cross-border movement. We hear the fraught and deeply political conversation about migration in Europe next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Creative Playthings, committed to helping kids develop social skills as they play. Creative Playthings offers custom swing set designs and recommendations to fit any yard space. Learn more at creativeplaythings.com. And Gentle Giant Moving Company, official moving and storage provider for the Head of the Charles Regatta, employing rowers and athletes since 1980 and currently hiring to join their team. More at gentlegiant.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Governor Healey will be with us in about 90 minutes. She'll be live at the library from 1 to 2. And by the way, while you can call or text in a question, you can also ask her a question face-to-face from about 15 feet away. Mayor Wu will be doing the same thing here on Tuesday with us from 11 to 12. Reminder, our text question today for roughly 12:55. You can text at 877-301-8097. This is a serious story, even though there's another side to it. Sitting is really bad for you. As they say, sitting is the new smoking. Apparently, there's another health risk from sitting too much. I'll use the medical term, gluteal amnesia. It's
That's
bad.
right.
Was it bad butt syndrome?
Your rear end has amnesia.
Whatever. Are you worried about it? Do you sit all
From
day?
disuse.
Or you don't give a damn? 877-301-8097. For now, we're continuing to talk about yet another school shooting in Georgia. Asking for reaction from parents out there is, while they are rare, they are terrifying. Are you concerned about your kid's safety in a school? Parkland shooting survivor David Hogg, who's been with us a number of times, said he hoped that we would, quote, wouldn't still have to be having these conversations, but unfortunately this crisis obviously continues and will continue, to use an odd phrase, with J.D. Vance saying it's fact of life, Donald Trump saying we just have to get over it. And if you care about that issue, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz actually think something should be done in a common sense fashion. The number is 877-301-8097.
Listen to this in response to J.D. Vance's calling this a fact of life. This is a texter. My first thought when I graduated high school 2 years ago was relief that I actually made it through high school without being in a shooting. And I've had conversation with friends who felt the same way. Kids should be excited about graduating, not excited about surviving. I will never be resigned to this being a fact of life.
Good for you. Ellen in Milton, next. Welcome to the show. Hi. Ellen.
Hi, Ellen. You there? Oh, we lost Ellen. Oh, is she back?
No, she just didn't go anywhere. Ellen, you going to talk? Or we'll put you on hold. We'll get back to you next. Richard in Framingham. Hey there.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Can I be disparaging of the other side? And I'm not, just so you know,
Sure.
I'm not a Second Amendment fan.
You can say whatever you want.
Go ahead.
Good. I'm tired of arguing with these mental midgets who keep saying
that's disparaging.
Go ahead. People, guns don't kill people. People don't kill people. That's not the question, moron. The question is whether people with guns kill more people than people without guns. And that's the
Wish I had that, Richard. Go ahead.
That's a good one, Richard.
So, by the way, fix the tea.
Fix the
tea? Tea.
Oh, fix the tea.
I'm just throwing that in there.
Okay, well, you can call that money.
Right.
Richard, thank you.
Thanks.
I mean, it's
That's
obviously,
that was a great
I'm not
line.
agreeing with the moron part of this necessarily, but I mean, it's true. And again, look at the comparison. When they talk about mental health stuff, which is another talking point besides fact of life, there are mental health problems in every society, and no society has this level of gun violence like we do. I mean, it's so evident.
It's just a bunch of baloney because are we doing anything about mental healp crises in the United States of America?
We talk about.
I mean, are we making more health care available for mental health? No, we're not in any significant way. Bree from Stoneham, what do you think, Bree?
Hey, Bree.
Hi. I first and foremost think that we shouldn't own guns. I am very polarized on this. I think guns are the problem. I think we need to support mental health in this community, and it's wild to me. This should not happen. But why I called in is we have a 2-year-old who goes to daycare, and I'm terrified sending him every single day because I'm afraid of what could happen. And it's now become a selling point at daycares, newer daycares, that they are able to offer bulletproof glass
Is that true?
on their windows and bulletproof doors.
Is that true? I didn't know. Is that in Massachusetts?
In Massachusetts, I've seen a few, and in southern New Hampshire, it is a pretty big selling point that they'll say it as one of like their safety features.
That's incredible.
Locked doors, keypad, keyless entry, whatever, and bulletproof glass.
Wow.
I mean,
that's pretty depressing.
On one hand, but Bree, as sad as that is, I assume it's probably reassuring to someone like you who's really nervous about your 2-year-old's safety, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad that they're thinking about it. It's just really sad that we have to. We were in London just last year to attend a football game, and we're in a massive stadium with huge crowds of people and felt completely safe, knowing that there wasn't going to be a mass shooting. And I don't feel the same here.
Bree, that was an excellent call. Thank you for making it. We appreciate it.
When the person that just graduated from high school just texted, I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to go through school starting in kindergarten where you have shooting drills so you know how to act if there's a...
Which they did at this high school, by the way, at Appalachia High School. They did, yeah. They do everywhere. You're
in
right.
so many schools now, even elementary schools. I mean, so you are thinking about this if you're a student, because I'm sure if you hear a firecracker go off or a car backfire, I mean, you think something terrible is happening.
Well, it's also, to use the word we used in another context yesterday, it normalizes the prospect of violence in the mind of a young kid in this country, which may be real but horrible.
Yeah, our staff is reminding us that the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, has put more money, $46 million, into promoting mental health. But I mean, it's a drop in the bucket. It should be something that you should be able to get very easily through your insurance. And a lot of providers, as you know, don't take insurance.
Cat and Hull, hey.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Wow.
I'm a social worker. I know. I'm so excited I'm on.
So are we. Go ahead.
I'm a social worker. I worked in schools my whole career. I have a daughter who's a teacher. I'm getting tearful. I think this gun issue is so horrific. And the fact that the offering of some of our politicians is that it's mental health. I think we have a gun problem and we have a mental health problem.
Exactly.
But there has been no solution offered for either. And if somebody thinks getting a paintball gun is gonna solve this problem, they're seriously wrong. And it's just horrific. It brings tears to my eyes.
Kat,
Thank you.
That was a spectacular first call, and we hope you call us again. Thank you. I mean, what she said in there, too, they're not serious about it either. It's totally true. Which of the anti-gun reform elected officials, Marjorie, who says mental health is a problem, has filed a bill with adequate funding to provide adequate mental health help to young people in this country? And as Kat said, she's right, that's not enough, even if they did it. How many times do they file a bill?
I don't think anybody
Thoughts
has.
and prayers, fact of life.
Yeah.
Got to get over
Well, this
it.
is the Department of Health and Human Services under a Democratic administration, and it's something, but it's not enough,
Even
obviously.
if you're a big, as that first caller said, 2A person, big Second Amendment person, and you hear the vice presidential candidate you're supporting saying it's a fact of life, you hear the presidential candidate who you're supporting in January, saying we have to get over it, and you have a kid, how is that your candidate to lead this country, even if you're a deep believer in the Second Amendment? Get over it. We have to get over it, and it's a fact of life. Send your kid to your school in your neighborhood.
Well, I mean, I think, as I said before, if you read J.D. Vance's book, he had a horrible childhood, and I think we're seeing the results of that horrible childhood in the J.D. Vance who's a grown-up. I mean, he says the strange and crazy things. I mean, he talks about how women shouldn't be working and women should be home having babies, and the only purpose of postmenopausal women is to take care of grandchildren like his grandmother took care of him. His own wife was working full-time with 3 children until he ran for office. So I just think he's a kind of a disturbed guy. So you got 2 disturbed guys running together, you know, Trump and
So it's
Vance,
like perfect
side by
symmetry?
side.
Is that your point?
Yeah, 2 disturbed people. If that's what you want, you know.
An anonymous texter said, no children have been killed by a book, but those are banned. This is, and goes on to say it's illogical. I think that's a euphemistic adjective country.
Kevin in the car, thank you for calling.
Hey.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you for calling.
I just wanted to mention that the school that Mayor Wu was at yesterday, the Lee School in Dorchester.
Yeah, Joseph Lee, yeah.
Elementary school. I know someone who teaches there. And that school is constantly unlocked all the time. Anybody can walk in at any time. No security.
And
well, Kevin, that's
Kevin,
not... he
Kevin hung up.
I think that's not particularly unusual.
Kevin, can I make a suggestion? Rather than just saying it to us, which we appreciate, Mayor Wu is going to be here 11 to 12 on Tuesday. Why don't you call her? And I'm serious. Why don't you call in and pose that issue to her, and let's see what the mayor has to say about
I mean, I know where
that
some schools
situation.
have made it so you can only go through the front door, you can't go through the side doors, you know, but not every school is locked up to be, I don't know what they do in
Well, some
Cambridge.
people, I assume that caller thinks it should be, and so that's, I think, a fair question to ask an
Well,
elected
again,
official. don't you think?
I don't know enough to know what kind of, but I would imagine if you have one of those weapons and you see how powerful those bullets are and how, you know, and how fast it can be sprayed, I'm not sure that a lock on the door is going to solve your problem either.
You know, I'm looking behind you. I'm sorry, I'm not ignoring what you said, but I'm watching Donald Trump do a press conference. This is all today on the man who wants to return to the White House. Today, he is appealing the E. Jean Carroll jury award in this case. Remember, the jury found that he was civilly liable for a set of facts that in Massachusetts would be rape. It was only sexual abuse. That's today. Today, another judge is deciding if he'll be sentenced for 34 felonies, this is Judge Merchan, on September 18th, whatever that is, a week or so, or if it'll be postponed after the election. That's 2 on the same day for the man who attempted to overthrow the government who's running
Don't
for
forget,
president.
that was a jury. That was a jury trial.
And Judge Chutkan is deciding today, or decided yesterday, when briefs will be filed on what level of immunity for prosecution Donald Trump should benefit from in his effort, again, to overthrow the government of the United States. That's in 24 hours. That's the same guy who, by the way, said, but we have to get over it. We have to move forward after the shooting. I think it was of a 6th grader and a principal, if I remember correctly, in Perry, Iowa, earlier this, my God, year. Harry in a car, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about a conversation springing from the HAR in Georgia the other day. Hello there, Harry.
So we have 9 congressmen. They're probably all getting reelected, right? Come the term in January, one of them should step up and file a resolution, which we've filed a million times before, that says that the AR-15 should be outlawed, or certification, or this is crazy. It don't happen in Massachusetts. Of course the schools are unlocked.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, you want to ban the AR-15s, I think is.
Well, I
is his
think where
point.
he may be going, he's gone, unfortunately, is a lot of people think even if you have the votes for something, you should file the bill and put pressure on people. I mean, that's what Joe Biden did recently about court reform. I don't know if
He
he
said
filed a
it
bill.
over and over again that they should be banned.
I know,
and they were banned for a while.
But even if you can't do it, sometimes it's important to have people on the record. The problem is in the House you can't get a vote. You could obviously, because the Republicans decide what gets a vote. In the Senate, Chuck Schumer should do exactly what that caller said. Let every Republican be on the record and saying that high-capacity magazines and AK-47s and whatevers are perfectly fine.
Yeah, it was Bush that got rid of it, right?
Got rid of what?
it, the assault weapons ban.
Well, it existed under Clinton. I think it expired. I don't know if he got rid of it. I think it expired in 10 years. So I don't. It maybe had been during Bush, but I don't think it was in a affirmative action by
yeah, we should find that out. Was it Bush that got rid of it, or was it it just expired? Bob in Fall River, thank you for calling.
Hello, Bob.
Oh, good morning, Jim and Marjorie.
If you remember, in an earlier call quite a while ago, I discussed the first incident within the Trump administration, namely the Mandalay Bay shootings in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
The count of 58 dead and over 500 wounded. Now, the gentleman there utilized bump stocks to give him his weapons even more power because putting on automatic. If you recall, this Supreme Court has basically vacated laws preventing the use of bump stocks.
By the way, that law, for once, we have to give a little bit of credit to Trump. Wasn't the law signed by Trump as president, right, Bob?
Okay. I'll go that far.
Okay. So will I.
The thing is that Mr. Justice Jackson, in another context, once said that the Constitution is not a suicide pact. It appears that the current Supreme Court believes it is. That even the most practical considerations involving these high-capacity weapons don't seem to faze anybody because of this current idolatry we have toward the Second Amendment.
You're so right.
This misinterpretation, which was sponsored by the NRA. If you go to NRA headquarters, up on the wall, I've seen photographs, I've never been there personally, there's an ellipsis, and then the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, what they cut out is the concept of a well-regulated militia. Is that what the founders envisioned? Over 300 million people with as many or more weapons being a well-regulated militia? I mean, it's absurd.
By the way, we should, Bob, if I may interrupt, Marjorie and I talk, I hope, more than anybody on the radio about the importance of the presidential vote vis-a-vis nominations to the Supreme Court. That decision that decided a well-regulated militia really meant that individuals had a right to bear arms. First time in American history that Constitution was found to say that. Was a 5-4 vote. One justice tipped the scale in favor of declaring that language in the Second Amendment, which to me, like you, does not suggest at all that individuals should be able to have these kinds of weapons. That's what put us in the current legal state of affairs, again, because of those who sit on the Supreme Court. Bob, thank you for reminding us, and thank you for your call. We
Here's a
appreciate
text from Pete in New Hampshire. Guns have always been around. Kids used to bring guns to school for firearms classes. So what has changed? And I mean, Pete, as long as you ask, I think what's obvious is that the high-capacity magazines, the ability of these guns to mow down little children so quickly and so with such devastating consequences to the body that the parents aren't even able to recognize the kids except by what they may have worn to school that morning or the shoes. He says mental health in this country is the issue, but what are we doing about mental health? Not nearly enough. But you used to have to reload your guns, and you couldn't mow down.
Well, in the Gabby Gifford situation, one of the reasons why fewer people were killed is because they had to reload the weapon.
That's exactly right.
By the way, here's another local student, anonymous text. I'm a recent graduate from a high school in Massachusetts. We had many scares of school shootings, threats, rumors, dismissals from teachers who did not take it seriously. Even though, thankfully, I haven't been part of a real school shooting, I was and still am very traumatized from the false alarms. Sitting in a classroom anticipating the very real fact that you may be shot is an experience that stinks, said the recent graduate.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's what we're willing to subject the children of America to, because everybody wants to have, not everybody, but so many people want to have their high-capacity magazines and their high-powered weapons.
Yeah.
By the way, you were right, Jim. Bill Clinton's assault weapons ban expired in September 2004 under George W. Bush. Okay, we are moving on. We're going to hear something
a little brighter.
Yeah, something a little brighter. We're going to hear some great music in just a second. Norway-based singer-songwriter Tiril Jackson is about to release her debut EP, and she's going to preview some of her songs with us next. This is some great music. Where do you hear it? This is Live Music Friday. After a quick break, you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcast.
GBH News investigates.
A state report showed 85% of the small claims court docket last year was filed for debt collection.
These courts were created to allow individuals to have their day in court without process.
But critics say
these sophisticated companies are using it to steamroll people.
Companies come to court with lawyers, while for many low-income consumers,
I don't have a legal representation. I can't fight the system.
I'm Jennifer McKim. Find this story at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Newport Mansions, protecting, preserving, and presenting an exceptional collection of house museums and landscapes in one of the most historically intact cities in America, Newport, Rhode Island. Tickets at newportmansions.org. And Shriners Children's Boston. Accidents happen, and when those accidents involve a burn injury of any size, Shriners Children's Boston is the place to turn for any burn. Shriners Children's Boston, the most amazing care anywhere.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The governor will join us in person in an hour and 15 minutes. Take your questions. Today's text prompt at 877-301-8970. Sitting is bad for you. Marjorie's not sitting. I'm not sitting. The band, with one horrible exception, is not sitting. But it's bad for you. Do you know that it's bad for you to sit? Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. In any case, he's sitting, but in any case, and he probably will suffer someday from dead butt syndrome, which is I'm sorry. Oh, he's standing. You feel better? Feel a little better. Okay, fine. In any case, are you worried about it? And give us a text at 877-301-8970. Much more importantly, welcome once again to Live Music Friday at the library. Here this is Tiril Jackson, the Norwegian singer-songwriter, is about to release her debut EP, Who Are You? That's on September 26th. Then a free-to-all release concert on the 27th at 160 Mass Ave, Berkeley's CAF. For information, you can check out her Instagram, Tiril Jackson, Tiril. You're nodding? Good, I did it right. For now, here she is with her band performing her song, Who You Are.
But she's going to join us, and she's going to introduce her band members. And I don't think we ever talked to a singer-songwriter from Norway, so this is going to be a first for us here. Tiril, that was terrific.
Did you write that too?
Yeah.
That's fabulous. Pull your mic down just a couple of inches.
Tell
That's
us
perfect.
who's in your great band over there. That was fantastic too.
I have Juan on drums. I have Matthew on bass. I have Gabriel on guitar. Jackie on saxophone. And Elijah on keys.
Elijah's the sitting kind of guy. They're pretty good.
And the drummer.
Are you a Berkeley kid?
Yeah.
How's Berkeley been for you?
It's been good.
How'd you end up there?
I had a teacher in Norway who also went to Berkeley, so she recommended it to me.
Yeah, but I read in the notes when you talked to one of our producers before, you found people in Boston quite reserved, and you're ready to get out of here. Is that true? There's reserved as people in Norway.
Yes, I don't want to I'm not ready to get out of here that bad. I feel like I'm settled in now. It's my 4th year now. Yeah. But in Norway we're also very reserved, so I feel like maybe that's similar.
Maybe it's a cold climate, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe it's like I thought people were angry here at first, but they're really not. They're just a little to themselves.
Well, speaking of Norway, can we talk about Norway for 1 second, if I may?
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the fact that the Nordic countries are the happiest countries in the world. That's the good news. Here's the bad news.
Okay.
You are the 7th happiest country in the world. Sweden, Finland, some of those other countries. Denmark are all ahead of you. Why?
That's a loaded question, I feel like, to give me.
It is loaded. That's why I gave it to you.
I'm not sure. Maybe it's just the cold. Because I'm from the north, and it's even colder there. I think it's colder in Norway than in the other ones.
Do you watch Scandinavian noir television? It's my favorite stuff. Occupied, Wisting, that sort. You don't? Oh.
No.
Oh,
No.
It's fabulous.
Sometimes.
Fabulous.
So I want to know about pop industry. Supposedly is getting big in Norway, but I'm wondering how much American music is pretty international. Is it a lot of influence from American music, or is it the Norwegians are really coming into their own, or what?
I think lately Norway's really gotten into the pop industry, especially electro pop.
Yeah.
But American music is definitely a big influence for Norwegian music industry, I would say.
Okay, so I'm going to sound like somebody just met you on the street and didn't know anything about your music, but I am always dying to know.
Yeah.
When there's 24 hours with no sun, that's tough.
Yeah, I didn't even know until I left. No, because
that was different from the rest of the world?
Yeah, or I knew, but I didn't really know how it makes you feel, because it makes you feel like you get a little heavy at the end of that 24 darkness period. But then when it's 24 hours of sun, it's oh my gosh.
Yeah, so what is that?
Life is so good.
Do people still go to bed at the same time, even when there's 24 hours of sun, or do they just hang out and celebrate all day long
I feel
and
like
night long?
Both, because you can be up whenever but we still have things to do, so we're not. But I think it just I feel more energized when I'm over there.
Can we get back to, are these all really from Berkeley? Is this whole assemblage?
All of them.
What does that feel? I mean, we used to have Roger Brown on all the time, who's the president of Berkeley before you got there for a bunch of years. He's now still involved in the music industry, doing a lot of stuff with startups and incubators and that sort of thing. What kind of, that environment has to be so incredibly stimulating, where everywhere you look, there's somebody doing a variation on what you do.
Yeah, I would say it's challenging also being in a space where we're all musicians, but it's also I'm so grateful because when you go outside of Berkeley, you really notice, okay, I'm a little weird. You're very into music, but over there everyone's into music, and we're all this group is so amazing. They're so good, and we have so much fun.
Wouldn't you say almost every musician we have on here that knocks our socks off went to Berkeley?
Has a Berkeley connection.
Or they're
That's
at
true.
Berkeley at the current time. Yeah, so they're doing something great at Berkeley, that's for sure. And our own Emmett Price is with us every Tuesday. He's also a reverend, is a teacher over at Berkeley, and he's got an incredibly talented musical background too. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, there's so many talented people at Berkeley.
So what's happened with this release party on the 27th?
Yeah, I'm having a Berkeley calf show, you can say it is, where I'm releasing my EP on the 26th. So that will be, I will play all my songs, and it will be kind of a release party, so everyone can come.
What's your writing deal? How do you write? How do you inspire? How do you get inspired? How do you write? When do you write?
I think I get inspired from just my own life experiences, which kind of everyone does, but it's also very self-reflective about how I feel about certain situations. Especially this EP is family based over like 3-4 years.
What do you mean by that?
Just like things I've experienced within my family and like the Black Lives Matter movement and everything, where I'm from. And I'm from a very mostly white area, you know, so it's like that has been challenging.
You're like Norway. Norway's almost all white.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are you going to sing and what inspired this particular song? You're going to do another one for us.
Yeah, this song is called Amnesia, and it's kind of about that 24 hours where it's like dark.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Before you go, real quick.
Yeah.
So do Norwegians think that Americans have lost their marbles by electing Donald Trump as president and maybe electing him again?
Yeah, no, for sure, yeah.
For sure.
I was so afraid she's going to say, well, I really don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
Can you gently take your headset off and rejoin your bandmates?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Tiril Jackson, again, the EP comes out on the 26th, and there is a release party on the 27th.
Yes.
Marjorie will tell you about that.
And it's called Who Are You, is the debut EP that's coming out on the 26th. That's the name of it.
Did I say Who You Are before? I think I got it backwards.
Who are
In any
you?
case, yeah, whatever.
That's right. Who Are You? Okay, here we go. We're going to
Amnesia.
Amnesia.
Take it away.
wonderful. If you're listening to Norway's own singer-songwriter Tiril Jackson.
They've got the right stuff. Don't miss a special performance from the iconic boy band that continues to capture the hearts of millions. And watch New Kids on the Block, iHeartRadio Live, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
I'm Boston Public Radio producer Aidan Connolly, and you're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. A reminder that the governor joins us here at 1 o'clock today, when the microphones are muted during next week's presidential debate between a convicted felon and a former prosecutor. Who will benefit the most? GBH's Callie Crossley joins us to discuss that and more.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Look at the latest on another possible but going nowhere ceasefire proposal between Israel and Gaza from the Ground Truth Project's Charlie Sennott. Then, for our tech segment of the day, do you suffer from gluteal amnesia, otherwise known as dead butt syndrome? If you are a desk-bound worker, you may have experienced the tingling and physical pain of sitting for too long and the withering away of your butt. We want to know, how are you staying active in our sedentary world? Text us at 877-301-8970. That's all ahead. Boston Public Radio 89.7, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Amy Held. A White House National Security Council spokesman says he is deeply disturbed by the killing of an American woman in the West Bank and is seeking an Israeli investigation. The Palestinian Ministry of Health says she died today after being shot in the occupied West Bank. NPR's Heiley Al-Shalchi reports she was reportedly participating in a protest against land grabs by Israeli settlers.
26-year-old American Turkish Ayşe Nur Ege was brought to the Rafidia Hospital in the city of Nablus with a gunshot wound to the head, according to Dr. Fouad Nafa. Dr. Nafa said she arrived with fixed dilated pupils. The doctor said she did not have a heartbeat, and doctors performed 6 cycles of CPR, but they were unable to save her life. Palestinian health officials said the Israeli military shot her by live ammunition. Israel's military says forces near Nablus, quote, responded with fire toward a main instigator of violent activity who hurled rocks at them. Officials say they are looking into reports that a foreign national was killed. The U.S. ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, expressed condolences to the woman's family and said they were gathering more information. Heiley Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
2 days after 4 people were shot dead at a Georgia high school, the 14-year-old student, suspected gunman, and his father, charged in connection, made their first court appearances separately. Neither made a plea nor sought bail today. Both will remain jailed. In the city of Winder, Judge Curry Mingledorf set a December court date for the accused gunman, who faces life without parole.
You are charged with 4 counts of felony murder, as outlined in the state warrants that have been issued against you.
2 14-year-olds and 2 teachers were killed. 9 people were hurt. Victims' family members were also in the courtroom, including one clutching a stuffed animal. Former President Donald Trump appeared in a Manhattan courtroom today. He is appealing a $5 million judgment that found him liable for sexual abuse and defamation of a columnist. President Biden is traveling to Ann Arbor, Michigan Union Trading Center to sign an executive order promoting strong labor standards. NPR's Eric McDaniel reports.
President Biden calls himself the most pro-union president ever. He was the first sitting president to walk a picket line. And the administration says that his economic agenda, including the bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, have created hundreds of thousands of jobs. Today's executive order, they say, will further that effort by pushing federal agencies to prioritize a set of specific labor standards. And the site of their trip at a union training hall is no accident. Michigan is all but a must-win state for Vice President Harris come November, and organized labor is a key constituency there. Eric McDaniel, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, stocks are trading lower following a mixed jobs report. It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The man who bludgeoned Boston gangster James Whitey Bulger to death in a West Virginia prison is being sentenced today. Federal prisoner Foitos Freddy Gaius has agreed to change his plea from not guilty to guilty. Prosecutors say Gaius used a lock attached to a belt to repeatedly hit the 89-year-old Bulger in the head hours after he arrived at the Hazleton prison in West Virginia in 2018. Authorities say Gaius was a mafia hitman when he was on the outside, who was already serving a life sentence for previous violent crimes. He was charged with murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in Bulger's death, with each of those charges carrying a sentence up to life. Earlier this week, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey named retired Lieutenant Colonel Geoffrey Noble of the New Jersey State Police the new leader of the Massachusetts State Police. And it turns out Mr. Noble got his start in law enforcement on Nantucket Island. The Nantucket Current reports that Noble, whose career in law enforcement spans 3 decades, started out as a summer special police officer with the Nantucket Police Department. Noble says it's a true honor that Governor Healey has put her trust in him to lead the Mass State Police. And, of course, Governor Healey will be on with Jim and Marjorie in just about 1 hour. In sports, Red Sox back at Fenway this weekend for a series with the White Sox. Friday night football, the Packers and the Eagles play in Sao Paulo, Brazil. It's a real game. Patriots open their season in Cincinnati on Sunday. That's a 1 p.m. start. 72 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Made in Cookware. Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for use in restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. I am Marjorie Egan. He is Jim Browdy. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Governor Maura Healey is going to be with us in an hour to take our questions and yours from 1 to 2. We're very excited about that. On Monday, we're going to be joined by the MBTA General Manager, Philip Eng. He's going to talk to us about the many travails on the T, what he's doing about that. And
taking your questions.
That's right. Thank you. And we'll be back here on Tuesday for another edition of Ask the Mayor with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu and the Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Doris Kearns Goodwin. And one more thing. Today's text prompt, we're doing this new text thing. I was just telling Callie about this. Every day, a little bit before 1 o'clock, the number to call, or the number to text at, rather, is 877-301-8970. So we read about this in the New York Times, so it's actually legit. But there is this new thing. We know sitting is the new smoking, right, Jim? We learned that.
We do know that.
Now there's another apparent health risk that I had no idea even existed, but now I do, from sitting too much. It's called dead butt syndrome.
Of course it is.
Where your rear end apparently forgets what it's supposed to do. So are you worried about this? Did you even know it existed? Do you think you need to stop sitting all day at the office? And what are you going to do to ward off dead butt syndrome in your own buttocks? As what's his name said in that movie, buttocks. Remember him?
No.
Oh yes, in Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump.
Yeah. Now I remember
Tom
him.
Hanks.
Yeah.
Buttocks. Remember he said buttocks?
Yeah. The
Anyway,
show's almost over. Do you know what I mean?
text us your thoughts at 877-301-8970, and we'll read them a little bit before the 1 o'clock news.
We will. We're
Go
joined
ahead,
at the
Jim.
desk now, thank you, by Callie Crossley. Callie's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, Sunday nights right here at 89.7 at 6. Also can hear Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. Also co-host for GBH's The Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 o'clock right here at 89.7, including the Week in Review, which is at the Boston Public Library. So talk about a great 2 hours. Governor here live, 1 to 2, 2 to 3 live at the library, The Culture Show. Hello, Callie.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
So, Callie, the New Yorker magazine has got a very provocative color of black women of color, running around town with their little white babies in their little carriages. You know, you see this constantly.
There it is right there. If you're watching on YouTube or you're at the library.
I'm a white woman, obviously. I've always felt a little, I don't know what to think. You feel uncomfortable about it. But as a black woman, and a lot of black women are complaining of this story, what does this bring to your mind?
Well, the complaint is not a complaint so much as a sadness about a situation where obviously these wealthy white women can't afford to hire nannies. That's the first thing. This is a real job for a lot of these people, so let's understand that. But their own memories of parents who had the job, who, because it's caring for a child, then you I don't know what that was. Then often their relationships with their own children got short shrift. So a couple of them were commenting and said, they couldn't get off because if you got off, you didn't get paid.
Yeah.
And so, the money was for the family, so they kept getting paid. So that meant that my mom couldn't come to, this event for me or be there when I needed her for this because she was taking care of other people's children. And the really poignant part of it is that one of the women is holding up a picture of a young person in a cap and a gown, and the presumption is that that's her child, and she's very proud of the child graduating. So presumably the child would not end up being a nanny, she'd have other options, or he. But that was an indication to some of the commenters, to many of the commenters saying, hey, my mom was just not able to attend those things. And I recognize that she was working for the family, but it was really painful to see. And there were some people saying, well, just take care of your own children, which of course is not the point. That's why they hire the people. But what I think is also interesting is that the artist, the cartoonist, is R. Kikoa Johnson. And he was inspired to do this because he and his wife just had a kid, and they thought, well, maybe we'll get a nanny. Couldn't afford one. And then he said, let me look at this scene from the perspective of the caregivers and not of the other folks. And this is the concept that he came up with.
Yeah.
I'm not certain he thought it would be as provocative, but it's become quite provocative.
Yeah, well, it does hit you over the head because you don't quite know what to think. And the other thing I think, if you got the money to hire a nanny, and actually nannies aren't much more than daycare because daycare is so ridiculously expensive, should you not be hiring a woman of color if you're a white woman? I would say if you're treating somebody fairly and somebody's looking for a job and you're giving them time off and you're doing all the things you're supposed to do.
That's not really the point, though, is it?
Well, well, sort of the point, because these people.
Isn't the point about who can't do that?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that really the underlying thing? I don't think people are saying exclude people of color from that part of the workforce, or maybe.
Well, I think.
Well, that's why I was making the point that this is a job that that people need to, So,
but there still is something weird about it.
Well,
I don't know exactly.
Well, a lot of people are like, this just reminds them of the time of enslavement where this was not a job. It was a job, but it was an unpaid job. It was an assignment. And you didn't have anything else to say about it. And it was assumed that if you were a parent of a child born into enslavement, that the child belonged to the quote unquote master and the property and not you.
Yeah.
So you didn't have didn't have an opportunity to build those familiar relationships. So for a lot of people, it was like, oh, this reminds me of that, and it's very tough to take. So it's a complicated situation because, and by the way, should said white woman, as you're describing, choose to do that, she'd be hard pressed to find people who are not black and brown serving in these roles.
Well, so many. There's a lot of Caribbean women, or a lot of women from Guadeloupe, that came over from Central America and stuff. A lot of women of color, but I think the underlying things too is that you certainly should treat any nanny with good pay, good benefits, good respect.
And I think a lot of these people have ended up in long-term relationships or one set of parents. I know a lot of people who have baby nurses who are black and brown, and then at the the baby nurse has a defined period.
Oh, you mean like when the newborn is
when
there?
the newborn is there, then after I never had a kid, so I don't know, after whatever weeks they go away. But they've been recommended to the next set of person that has a, so it can end up being a really good job, but generally speaking, these are low-paying jobs, and there are no benefits, and there's no time off. And
well, it's a great cover that really stops you in your tracks, I think.
I was smiling not at the conversation. I hope people don't take it the wrong way. I was smiling because when you mentioned a minute ago, obviously, you said, Marjorie, obviously, if you hire people to do this work, you should pay them and be respectful, et cetera. I was thinking of, at the second, who was the nominee either for the Supreme Court? Zoe Baird,
yes.
who failed to pay Social Security taxes and was the Supreme Court Attorney General.
Supreme Court.
And think how quaint that is. Donald Trump is holding a press conference appealing the decision where he found liable for raping E. Jean Carroll, and he's tied for the presidency. And Zoe Baird did not pay Social Security taxes on her nanny.
That's right.
And she was barred from proceeding with her nomination.
And when they were doing those stories at that time,
I know it does sound cool.
Because I think a lot of people thought, well, you do want to have unemployment, you don't have Social Security. On the other hand,
we should pay it, of course.
But a lot of people want to get paid in cash under the table. That's part of their deal because they might be young enough they're not worried about the Social Security taxes.
Right. I wasn't defending the behavior or not. I'm just saying that's what disqualified her as a parent.
And that seems like quaint. And that's the word. Exactly. That's the word. Yeah.
So speaking of the presidency, the debate is Tuesday. Thank God, because I can't take it anymore. Waiting with anxiety.
If I can take it that night.
Now, the biggest issue, sort of oddly, has become the muting of the mics, which Kamala Harris wanted done. She ultimately agreed, I think, yesterday they wouldn't be muted. I was totally wrong, I think. I've been saying on the air repeatedly, the only reason she wants this is because Trump's going to keep talking, be incredibly obnoxious.
Right.
And however, what I didn't think about until I read last night, the primary reason, according to the Harris people, they want it is because she's a great inquisitor, as was evidenced by her behavior on the Judiciary Committee nominee Kavanaugh, and she isn't able to turn to Donald Trump and pose hard questions and force him to answer, except under this provision where ABC can, in certain circumstances.
And by the way, they said they didn't agree to that.
Is that true? Oh, I didn't know that.
They said in here, the only thing that we've said that is, on the table is that there will be no muting of mics. But this other stuff that her people put in saying these were other, parts of the deal, ABC said, well, we didn't say necessary. I'm going to guess they will, because they'd be kind of crazy not to. You don't want to cut off an exchange because that says a lot on many levels. So, but they claim that's not, according to this article, that, that's not written in stone that they have to.
I think I was on the wrong side. I'm not sure. I think I was on the wrong side of this issue during the Biden debate. I think my view was all Trump's going to do is harass and interrupt.
Yeah.
But that's whoever he is what should be presented. Whoever Harris is what should be presented to people.
Well, yes.
For whatever it is. I don't know if it's 90 minutes or whatever.
All I can remember is his stalking Hillary Clinton
from behind.
From behind, and that was so disturbing to me and upsetting. And that no one could, there was no role for anybody to say, go stand over there.
The moderator should have said, go back to your podium.
I know, but we're under these terms now where the moderators have said, we're not correcting, we're not going to say, these are alleged grown people, that they should be able to, take care of themselves. But I thought that was particularly troubling. And so I thought maybe the muting was part of that. I have to say, this piece by Bina, who used to work here.
Bina Venkat-Raman, who was the editor of the editorial page, editor of the Globe.
This is
in the Washington Post.
And I'm thinking, why didn't I think about this?
Well, go ahead.
Well, she wrote a piece saying she thought there should be ASL, the focus on the muting of the mic are not the issue for her. That there should be ASL interpreters, American Sign Language interpreters, so that is more inclusive for everybody. I didn't realize that in past debates, a couple of them, that one of the deaf organizations had raised money to have a very specific webcast so they could play the debate and then have the interpreters on that webcast. But that presumes everybody has access to all that anyway. But here you have, this is going to be on and available for everybody else. There should be some ASL interpreters, and people, as a rule, we have those. I don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
And the other point that she made is that it's not even just for deaf people. Right now, as I think we've talked about, we've certainly talked about it on the Culture Show, closed captioning is used by a lot of people who
I love it.
Not even necessarily hard of hearing.
Because you can't understand what they're saying.
Yes, and because the mix, this may not mean anything to people, but technically, you're mixing all the levels of sound, so the actors' voices, the music, the this and that. And what they've been doing so often, as we've discussed on the Culture Show, is they mix it so hot. So the background sounds are so loud, sometimes I turn it all the way up to say, what did they say?
Yeah.
And I don't use closed captioning, but it's so muddled.
Yeah.
By the way, some breakthrough work has been done at GBH on closed captioning.
Breakthrough, pioneering.
That's right.
Pioneering.
Huge.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing that I totally agree with her, and we should do better about this. It's a sad, a sin and a shame that we are not.
Can I return for a second?
Before we leave this, though, she has a fascinating little thing in here about Chilmark, and you're a Martha's Vineyard fan.
Oh, yes, I know about that.
Where they had this epidemic of hereditary deafness down in Chilmark. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, there's been a lot of documentaries about it. Yeah, a lot of stories, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to go back to the muting of the mic thing only because one of the memorable moments for me, which is, I think, is an example of what you might hear at a presidential debate. Here's a clip from 2018. Kamala Harris is a senator from California. She's on the Judiciary Committee. It's day 2 of Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation hearing. And here you'll hear Harris's voice and Kavanaugh attempting to respond on sex-based law.
Can you think of any laws that give government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm happy to answer a more specific question. But
male versus female.
There are medical procedures
that the government has the power to make a decision about a man's body.
I thought you were asking about medical procedures that are unique to men.
I'll repeat the question. Can you think of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm not thinking of any right now, Senator.
That's what you'll be missing, apparently, based on this muting of mics.
Well, what did you think of her in the first interview she did? I mean, she wasn't specific. She'd been criticized for that, for glossing over some things, for repeating herself. But I thought I was not a fan of hers the first time around when she ran for president. I always thought she was a woman transformed. She had a real charm to her and a confidence, and I thought she was really good.
Well, here's what's going to be tough for her, and it was always going to be tough for her. And she had a little test run in that interview, and this may be why she is being very careful about how she is interviewed. Even if she wasn't going to run on joyful, she has to be joyful. She's a black woman. The minute she looks like she's going to give the side eye or raise her voice, she's the angry black woman. It's over. So that's the problem for her to deal with Donald Trump. You have to really seriously resist responding to every trigger he's going to throw at her. She was able to in that interview, of course, when they brought up all the stuff he's been saying about her, not being black before or not being South Asian, whatever the hell he was saying. And she said, I'm not even dealing.
She said, next question.
Next question.
That was the best moment I thought of the whole interview. I love that.
And you're so accustomed to people responding to all of this stuff. And at first, when she did not respond to it in real time when these things happen, I thought, isn't she going to say it? And I thought, no, this is right.
Yeah.
You should just don't go down the wormhole. But listen, it's, 2 hours? 90 minutes?
I don't know how long it is. I'm guessing 90 minutes.
I'm guessing it's 90 minutes. And he's throwing every trigger he can at you. This is going to be hard to maintain, a persona that is calm, but not angry, but firm, but knowledgeable. The women are in that trap all the way.
That is true.
And it's extra
and they
trap
said
for her.
this a million times about Michelle Obama. I remember she was the first lady. She wasn't even obviously the candidate.
Right. So she's so angry. She's so angry. So, this is going to be just for that alone, just to see how she can manage him. I thought having a muted mic would be better for her with regard to at least that, but I guess not. Now, they said that her aides are going to be somewhere close so they can pick up whatever he's saying off mic.
Well, they're also allowing the press to be much closer than they were at the first debate, where they will be able, but we won't arguably hear it simultaneously.
But I said to myself, okay, so you got what he said off mic. He just says, I didn't say it, and here we are again. Right?
Even if it's on mic, he'll say he didn't say it. So what the hell's the difference? By the way, we were going to talk about Judge Merchan today. In the felony case, he's supposed to decide today. We discussed this with Judge Gertner yesterday, or whenever she was here, 2 days ago, whether or not he would sentence on the 34 felony convictions Trump on September 18th, or if he would agree to the motion to postpone the sentencing till after November 5th. But apparently, no decision yet. So
But it is today.
It is today. It's supposed to be today. He said he was.
All right.
Something did happen yesterday, though, in terms of the courts. A doctor, I think a respected doctor, the president of the Massachusetts Society of Addiction Medicine, was sentenced to 9 months in jail and I think 2 years suspended sentence for her involvement in January 6th. What'd she do, Callie Crossley?
She literally assaulted an officer. And it's so shocking. She said that she's now accepting full responsibility for her actions, but she just came at her and just lunged. It was like she had an out-of-body experience in the moment and was caught up in this. It's not clear to me when she says, I accept full responsibility for my actions, and she goes on to say, I truly wish reason had prevailed over my emotions. Does that mean she realizes in the larger context that this whole thing was nutty? I'm not clear.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm not clear either.
Yeah.
I don't know either.
Did you see that mother about 6 or 8 months ago interviewed on CNN who was also convicted, who was about to go to jail? She had many children. I can't remember how many. Right. And the reporter from CNN was asking her the same question the judge was asking, you have remorse, whatever. And she just looked at him and said, absolutely none. I'd do it again. Leaving her, all her kids unattended.
Which he mentioned. You're going to leave all your kids.
Exactly. Supporting the attempt to overthrow the government by a guy who admitted 2 days ago that he actually lost the election by, quote, a whisker. It's just, it's really, I don't know much about this woman except what I've read in the Globe. It is amazing. Because we like to think that it's these people on the fringe of society.
No, it's not the
who
fringes.
Some are, but she's not. Jacqueline Thayer is her name, by the way.
Yeah, well, we're going to mention Nick Fuentes, the little shot we have from him, because he's a white supremacist. He was entertained by Donald Trump at the White House. But he was very upset because he heard about Donald Trump admitting to a podcaster that, in fact, he was aware he'd lost the election. Here's Nick Fuentes on that podcast.
Then you're a loser. Then you're a loser. You just lost. Then you lost to Joe Biden. You deserve to be charged. If he admits that he lost, then that actually vindicates the DOJ charge against him. Because the charge is that he knew he lost, but he lied to defraud the people. That's the DOJ's charge.
I'll tell you when white supremacists. Enough. We don't need to hear any more.
Yeah, he's got a really annoying voice.
Well, not an annoying voice. He's a white supremacist. I don't care if he had like a baritone.
But the point that why did all these people go down to D.C. to stop the steal? Why did they risk going to jail? A lot of them did go to jail. Some got 4 years the other day. When it didn't happen. And
well, you know what I think is interesting about this, given the context of the white supremacist. So already he's in another big lie, but clearly he is not one of the people who have always known that former President Trump lost the election and chose to therefore say it was a fraud though, and he really didn't, and blah blah blah. So we know those people. I would have assumed he was one of them. But he seems here to be truly shocked that, the guy actually is going around saying he lost it, and that's offensive to him. Many other things he's offended by with the whole Trump ticket, including J.D. Vance's wife, whom he describes as non-white and not Christian.
Oh, yeah, that's what really got him.
Christian.
Yeah, that really drove him over the edge.
Well, and the fact that their kid's name is Vivek really upset.
Yeah, really
we intended to move to this whole topic of people buying cheap houses on Cape Cod, knowing they're going to be in the ocean in 10 minutes, but why not for a discount? But one more thing. I meant to bring this up with Chuck Todd yesterday, but we ran out of time. This comment from Trump, where he admitted on a podcast 2 days ago that I lost the election.
He admitted it supposedly to Hope Hicks,
I
too.
But we didn't hear that. We heard it on this podcast.
Right.
I did some perfunctory research yesterday. I don't believe the New York Times or the Washington Post ran a story on him admitting. Peter Baker, a reporter for the New York Times, tweeted it out, maybe even tweeted a link to the interview, but I couldn't find, and I'll correct myself on Monday if I'm wrong, which is, this is a major moment. Yes, we all knew he was lying, but he just admitted he was lying, which totally undercuts not only the whole overthrow thing, but the 60 pieces of litigation. It's stunning. This is not a 3-inch kind of headline in the damn newspaper.
Well, remember now his lawyer, Sidney Powell, saying, oh, oops, this was just a joke, really. We didn't really mean to do all this stuff.
She did say that before the bar. Her disbarment thing. No one believed this anyway, she said.
That's right.
Okay, can we spend a minute on Cape Cod houses falling in?
Yeah, you can get a house on the water, apparently, for $400,000.
In the water, not on the water.
Well, it's not in the water yet.
It's close.
It's close. It's close to the water. I guess it was 100 feet from the water. Now it's 25 feet from the water. But it's an opportunity, Callie. If you got $400,000 hanging around, you too could be oceanfront for maybe another year, maybe 2 years, maybe 5, maybe 10.
I thought this guy had an interesting response. He said, life's too short.
Yeah.
So this is my dream, to be close to the water. You look at the picture, it's very beautiful. My concern would be before all the erosion goes away, all those severe storms that we now know are coming because of climate change, they're stronger, they're heavier, that well before the erosion hits, you might be blown out by one of these storms.
Yeah. And do you want to worry about that all the time? Do you want to leave anything that you value in that home?
He's going to plant some beach grass.
Sleep in the back bedroom, I think.
Sleep in the back bedroom,
He might, if he has to, he's going to move the front of the house to the back, but he's going to enjoy that water scene. I got to say, it's pretty great.
Well, what's great, too, that he said what he's going to do is allow people who are hospice people who are terminally ill to stay there for a while for free so they can have a view of the ocean for a few days. That's pretty generous kind of guy.
And he would, as has been said, he would never be able to come close to what the value of this house would be.
Didn't somebody do the same thing on Nantucket
recently?
Yeah,
they said it would be $600,000
for a $2 million house or something. By the way, do you guys remember, was it in Eastham, Jamie, we talked about this morning? It was a clam shack on the Cape.
Yeah.
And there was a great story. Not great because it's sad.
Yeah.
And I had been to it a number of times, I think in Eastham. It was in the Globe maybe 2 years ago. The guy and his son buy this clam shack. I hope I get the facts right, but I'll get them close anyway. And they hire some, I don't know, erosion specialist or whatever those people are, who says you have 10 years, you have 12 years, you whatever. And how fast was it in the ocean? Like 2 weeks later or something?
It was like within weeks.
Oh my God.
Now, Nauset Clam Shack, Liam's in 2018.
Did he sue
Thank you, Jamie.
Did he sue the appraiser?
I think he sued the ocean, is what he did. And,
but I think it's there as a food truck. Isn't it there as a food truck now? Yeah, Jamie says it's there as a food truck now.
That's not the point.
It's not the
But
point.
you know what's interesting? If you do have enough, I mean, you have a better attitude about this than I think I did. If you have the money, I don't know how much, obviously he has enough money for this. He reasoned out the decision. I know I'm going to lose this thing, but this is my dream. And I have whatever, couple $100,000 for a place that I could never afford. Plus, he's not only doing something wonderful for himself, but for people who are ill.
Okay, so
It's
the
like,
only
go
thing
for
that
it.
we have to say that is negative, of course, should something happen to his house, short of, the whole erosion thing, you are in position to file to get funds.
We're going to pay for it. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so now that's, so actually we're paying for his dream in that way. And so I don't want to, leave this conversation and have a billion people texting you saying, are you kidding me? My tax dollars are paying for this guy's house if he has to redo it.
By the way, can I just, one of our, who did this? Somebody did a website, or Jamie did. I want to repeat this. The New York Times and the Washington Post neither ran a story on Donald Trump admitting that he lost the election when all we've coped with for years is he attempted, I'm sorry again, to overthrow the government based on the phony premise that he had won the damn...
Well, this is part of Margaret Sullivan, who used to be the ombudsman for the New York Times, and now she is. I think she writes for Substack or something like that. She's been at the Washington Post too. Says that we treat him too normally.
Yes.
I mean, I don't mean to repeat myself over and over again.
No, do this. This is huge.
But he's at this Moms of Liberties. Right. The only reason I knew about this was in Heather Cox Richardson's Substack thing. She writes. She's a historian for Boston College. She's a great historian. Anyway, she writes this thing I read the other day that he's at this this Moms for Liberty. They're the ones who wants to ban all the books event. And he talks about how in the schools of America, teachers or administrators, whoever, they are kidnapping the children, operating on them, and turning them from boys to girls to boys.
Yeah.
In the
While
school
they're in
day.
school.
I know.
Well,
Yeah.
And you thought, God, that is insane.
It is insane.
And that was not widely reported either.
No, but I did hear about that. For one thing, I would hope the teachers would say, now what period would I have time to do that?
Exactly.
No, just let me just address that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to teacher training, and you're telling me I have time to be changing somebody's sex
it's
during
bizarre.
the school day?
Callie, we got to go. What are you doing either Sunday night or this afternoon, or just tell us something about something?
So on Sunday night, we are looking at the 23rd anniversary of 9/11 and what is the rethinking of national security. What Andrea and I, my producer, think about is national security issues like TSA or whatever. That's not the deal. We are really in some deep doo-doo that we need to think about. So we have three security experts, including a general who was in the room with Bush when it happened.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh, that would be great.
And then we're doing, I think you guys talked to the people from Arrow.
They were
Fest,
great.
Oh, they're
and
great. Just great.
So we're doing a different company that you did, Boston History Company, in celebration of the launch of the Arrow Streets
Fabulous.
Arts.
And you're not going to tell us about the culture show. Listen to it at 2 o'clock right here live at the library. Callie, good to see you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you,
Be
Callie.
well.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with GBH's Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, Sunday nights, 89.7, 6 o'clock every Sunday night. You can also hear Callie commentaries on Monday for GBH's Morning Edition, and Callie, of course, is co-host of GBH's Culture Show, which is going to be here in the library, the whole gang, for their weekend review right after we're done and the 2 o'clock news is done. Up next, we're going to talk with the Ground Truth Project's Charlie Sennott. We're going to talk to him about what's going on in Israel and Gaza, what's going on in Venezuela, and a bunch of other international news, plus Russians funding U.S. media companies to lie about what's going on in the United States, right-wing media companies, I should say, or stars. That's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
I'm Arun Roth, Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, as the fall semester begins, Harvard students against the war in Gaza will meet with the university's president. Governor Healey will be talking about new details when it comes to the direction of offshore wind in Massachusetts. Plus a conversation with filmmaker Lana Wilson about her new documentary, Look Into My Eyes, which takes viewers inside the world of psychic readings. That's all coming up at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Vermont Cheese Council, hosting Vermont Cheese Week this weekend through the 15th. A week-long festival featuring events with cheesemakers, breweries, chefs, and specialty food partners across Vermont. More at vtcheese.com. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The governor will join us live in person here in exactly 30 minutes. She'll be with us 1 to 2 answering your questions. You can ask her a question from the microphone right over there if you choose. Tuesday, the mayor is here to do the exact same thing from 11 to noon. Ask the mayor. We're joined now on Zoom by GBH News analyst Charlie Sennott. Charlie's the founder and editor-in-chief of the Ground Truth Project. Hey there, Charlie.
Hey, Jim. Marjorie.
Hi.
Hey, Charlie. Thank you very much for joining us. So I want to start with this piece. The guy who runs the New York Times, A.G. Salzberg, he's a publisher, wrote a piece in the Washington Post, actually, about how a strong man can disable the free press. What did he say?
Really, really important document, I think, and very interesting that it's published in the Washington Post, right? Which he talks about. He says that he, as the publisher of the New York Times, is publishing this in the Post to sort of say there's a muscle mass that needs to be created about those who care about journalism, who care about a free press, to understand the peril we face in the days, weeks, months, years ahead. And of course, the Trump administration is in his sights in this column, but he carefully threads the needle to say this is not about partisan politics. This is about a threat to the foundation of our democracy and one that we need to watch. And he does a very convincing outline of how this playbook has been used in many countries, Brazil, Hungary, India, time and time again, an attempt by authoritarian governments to systematically weaken a free press. And Trump has been telegraphing this through his many different aspects of his leadership and aspects of the campaign, and just in his own words and deeds in his first administration, he's made it clear he's going to double down in cracking down on what he considers a media elite that's out of touch from his point of view. And it's pretty ominous when you think about how this has played out in authoritarian rule in places like Hungary, India, Brazil. And we documented this. I just want to do a quick shout out. We really looked at this issue deeply at the Ground Truth Project a couple of years back in our series, The Autocrat's Playbook. And it really studied some of these countries. So this is a persistent theme for many years. And this piece by A.G. Salzberger is really important, worth reading.
You know, I worry that even if people do read it, they dismiss it. This is not Hungary. This is not Brazil. It's not India. All you have to do, you mentioned, I mean, was it last week that Donald Trump and a couple of days ago, J.D. Vance were both praising Orban from Hungary as a model leader and, you know, praising essentially his strongman kinds of ways. And I think when many of us think about cracking down on the press, we think about the most extreme kind of thing, like executions, which do happen in some countries. But this is a much more subtle but wildly effective way of silencing any honesty and truth coming out from a press at all. And I think this story is as important as you do. I think it is really terrifying about what could happen to our ability to monitor the behavior of a leader of this country should one particular man be that leader. So,
yeah. I mean, we ignore this at our own peril, for sure. As you point out, Jim, Trump's always been praising Orban for a long time, even invited him to Mar-a-Lago.
I forgot, that's right.
And had praised him as a, quote, smart, strong, and compassionate leader. And if you look at how Orban has consistently and systematically destroyed a free press in that country and how he has emerged as a sort of modern authoritarian. It's really important to know what he's saying. And this guy, I don't know well, but there's a Trump aide, Kash Patel.
Yes.
Yep.
And the threats that he makes and is quoted as making in this article are really chilling. The quote is, "We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly." And he's speaking directly to mainstream media. "We're going to come after you." I don't know if you need much more of a warning than that to really take this seriously as a voter or as a listener and to think about it. And I would get outside of the partisan politics of it and really dig into it as an issue for who are we as a country? What is our democracy? You know, Reagan was so eloquent in talking about how the foundation of our democracy is upon a free press. There's so many examples throughout history of how America has been a light in the world for great journalism. I'm worried. I've seen this erosion for a long time and studied it up front, really up close and personal through all these local news organizations we work with across America. They're really struggling. Journalism is under attack. It's withering, and we should all be aware of it.
Well, when you think about the term fake news, that really didn't come into the common usage until Donald Trump. Now everything is fake news, and you hear people, members of your family or friends, talk about fake news, how all these newspapers and TV stations are lying, and that is almost never true because you can get sued in newspapers when you tell these lies. You think about what the Globe alone has done, like right now about Stewart Healthcare and De La Torre and the great reporting by the Spotlight team, the great reporting by Brian McGrory used to be there about airplanes and taking their money and funding, saying it was taking Stewart's money and saying it was your money to honor your mother. This is all coming from great reporting. So, or the Catholic Church, the other thing with the Boston Globe. But I want to mention this other thing that's really scary to me too, coming from Russia, that the Department of Justice claims that Russia is paying this company to pay these right-wing personalities to repeat Russian propaganda about our elections in the United States and all these things. I mean, this is pretty scary stuff because these people have thousands of, if not millions of viewers altogether. Tell us about that.
It is scary, and it is directly connected to the New York Times publisher's column and the warning shot that he's putting out into the world. This is the living, breathing proof of an authoritarian government in Russia under Putin trying to come at our democracy and undercut our own democracy and influence our election. You know, it's not the first time this has ever happened, but the warnings coming out of Washington now are saying that the efforts to influence our election by Russia are more stepped up than they've ever been seen. So this new indictment in New York Southern District really goes after this organization out of Tennessee-based company, funded by Russian operatives, according to the Justice Department. And it's known as Tenet Media. And it's linked to right-wing commentators with millions of subscribers, and they go through YouTube, social media platforms, and they really are attacking the Biden administration and the Harris campaign and trying to influence particularly young people, frankly, who are on social media and who are trying to really think of how they can get informed, and they are not sophisticated about what they're reading. I say this with great love for a young generation I work with all the time, and I have 4 sons who embody that generation. There's not enough probing of the information they read, they take in. There's not enough sophistication around media literacy to know where it's coming from. And if you really study this indictment and you really look at a Kremlin orchestrated influence operation, there is reason to be deeply concerned that we're all getting played on social media through algorithms that don't reveal to us where this information is coming from clearly enough. We owe it to ourselves. It is our responsibility as citizens in an informed democracy to think about media literacy, know where it's coming from, evaluate your journalism. You know, places like GBH that fund Frontline and that fund, you know...
Oh, Frontline is so
GBH
great.
News. This is really important work where people play by the rules, they dig hard, they work hard, they're great journalists, and it's completely different out there in the netherworld of social media where there are no obligations, there are no rules, there are no standards for accuracy that they have to be beholden to. And I think it's really worrisome, and we just all have to be much more educated about this.
You know, by the way, Charlie's praising the work that journalists at GBH do 5 minutes before you and I talk about dead butt syndrome on the air. But it is what it is.
It was Jim's idea,
No, but
Charlie.
I want to stay on what you mentioned a minute ago. There are some, not many, but public school systems in Massachusetts that have as part of their curriculum exactly what you mentioned, Charlie, this media literacy thing. Is it Wellesley? It's one of the W's that has it was in the Globe, spectacular media literacy program. And talk about something that should be mandated into the curriculum for much younger than high school, young people, about how to be savvy about your sources and not accept anything at face value until you've done your work. It's a really important point. And for all of you superintendents out there who I'm sure agree with that, I hope you implement those kinds of plans in your place. We're talking to Charlie Sennott.
A guy named Alan Miller, former LA Times correspondent, a colleague of mine way back in the day, a really brilliant journalist, Pulitzer Prize winner, has started this media, sort of assessing media literacy campaign. He's got curriculum for the schools.
Oh, great.
Agreed. He is fantastic. His work is so important, and he's just really supportive. One of the people on his board is Marty Barron, who has been
former editor of the Globe and the Washington
really
Post.
actively involved in this issue of media literacy, and again, much needed.
So
Talking to Charlie Sennott.
Charlie, we spoke with you at the beginning of the week after the horrible killing of 6 more hostages murdered by Hamas in tunnels underneath in Gaza. What's the latest on any efforts to have a ceasefire?
Well, I mean, it's pretty grim to look at the landscape of what's happening, but there are some very small hopes that international mediators are going to try to put together a new ceasefire proposal. And what that will have to do is narrow the gaps that exist right now between Israel and Hamas and the U.S. and regional leadership. But it's really going to be tough. I mean, the stumbling blocks are almost insurmountable. And when you think about how Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel has actively sought to undercut the peace process for years. This isn't just after the October 7 attacks. This has been a long time coming. And the impossibility of the situation couldn't have been more grim than seeing those 6 hostages killed just before they were set to be liberated. Your heart just goes out to the Israeli families who still have those being held hostage. And the situation is dire. It's impossible to know, where do we begin to think how to end this thing? I really feel for anyone who has anyone who has a loved one or a friend or someone caught in this situation. The Israelis are suffering greatly. I want to really underscore that, because we lose that when we think sometimes in how do we adjust the volume on our outrage. There are 40,000 civilians who've been killed who are Palestinian in the Israeli military operation in Gaza. The vast majority of them are women and children, and they're innocent civilians just like those hostages who were captured by Hamas. And there are innocents on both sides. And I want to just keep reminding your smart listeners and this discussion that we have got to keep holding a place in our heart for both. And I worry about this polarized discussion of the topic, that we're not doing that. We're forgetting that. We have to remember that. Both sides need to do this. And the evidence of the desire among the Israeli people to get to a ceasefire and, frankly, to get rid of Netanyahu as a political leader was abundantly clear when 800,000 members of the leading unions just stepped out into the streets in a general strike. Sad part is it didn't last long. And now Netanyahu is back and emboldened again. I wish I had hope that I could breathe into this conversation. I don't right now. I think we're a far way off from a truly workable ceasefire agreement. It's much needed. And then I would just caution by saying, every time I think I can say something with certainty in the Middle East, you're surprised. And sometimes it's in the darkest hours of despair that there is a breakthrough. And I guess I'm hoping to be wrong, and that my sense that there isn't anything that's going to be a breakthrough anytime soon is dead wrong, and that the events will prove on the ground that there is a way to get to a ceasefire. It is desperately needed.
By the way, Netanyahu is quoted almost doubling down, going out of his way in the last 24 hours, saying there's not a deal in the making. not even close. So dashing any even moderate hope. You mentioned the other day, we spoke on Tuesday about a piece. I'm not a huge Tom Friedman fan, and it sounds like you are. However, his piece in the New York Times is so spot on. He's a person who's been very supportive of Joe Biden's position on foreign policy issues for a long time. He's very troubled by Joe Biden not exerting, well, at least publicly, more influence. And he also, I believe it was in his piece, maybe it was not on the New York Times, we talked about this the other day, the alleged final sticking point with Netanyahu, which is this Philadelphia corridor on the southern part of Gaza bordering Egypt. He repeats what we said to you the other day, is that many of Netanyahu's own generals say it's not necessary. And I know that Friedman says, and if it became necessary, it would be easy for Israel to reoccupy the corridor. So further evidence, at least to me, as a layperson looking at this from arm's length, that the only reason, this is what Friedman says, there's no deal is because Netanyahu doesn't think it benefits him.
I know, and I've disagreed with Tom Friedman in my life, as you have as well, Jim. But I do think this column in particular is him at his best. This is a very muscular summary argument, essentially saying that Netanyahu is a prime minister who is only driven by his own self-interest, and that it is becoming unconscionable. And I do think I trust his analysis of those generals and the ones he's interviewed who talk about the corridor and how it can be a deal in which that is given up for now because it can be reclaimed later. I trust that he's done that analysis. I haven't been there in a long time on the ground talking to the military leaders in Israel. So I'm always cautious. And I think I was maybe a little more cautious than usual in supporting that in our discussion the other day. But I would say, look, the point is, we're not going to have a peace deal because Netanyahu doesn't want it and because Hamas doesn't want it. And when you have the two parties who are both seeing their survival as being in this war, then the conditions are not right for a peace process to be formed in a way that it'll take hold. And who suffers in all that? The Israeli people and the Palestinian people. Right. And I've been watching this conflict for 30 years, and that is always the truth, that both sides, the Israelis and the Palestinians, are consistently failed by their own leadership.
Charlie Sennott, we really appreciate your time on a Friday. Thank you so much, and be well. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys.
We've been speaking with Charlie Sennott. He's a news analyst for GBH and founder and editor-in-chief at the Ground Truth Project. Charlie, thank you again. Okay, I always get stuck with these awkward transitions.
You do it beautifully.
Yeah, you can do it before the governor gets here,
I'm not doing it before
Jim.
the governor.
But anyway, after a quick break, we have been soliciting your texts about something called dead butt syndrome.
It's
Apparently,
Marjorie's idea,
it is a huge scourge sweeping across the hinterlands.
Look at all these people sitting.
Yeah,
obviously,
that's right.
It's a
They're all
problem.
sitting out there. They're all in big trouble. We're going to tell you all about it in just a second. And we're going to read some of the texts after a quick break. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The history of busing in Boston is often framed as a black and white affair, but it wasn't just that.
I wish that they could have done a lot better educating the kids from China.
This is the busing story that played out from Chinatown to the North End.
5 school committee members, all white, sat up there like they were God.
Where Chinese parents had to fight for their voices to be heard.
By the time the Chinese parent went up to read their letter, 3 of them got up and left.
I'm Philip Martin.
Find the story now at gbhnews.org.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. With you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie. And live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Ask the Governor with Maura Healey is about 10 minutes away. And let's finish this segment before she walks into the building. I consider this to be like a PSA. You're embarrassed. I think it's a public service announcement.
Okay.
All throughout today's show, we've been soliciting your texts on the subject. This is in the New York Times, by the way, of something called dead butt syndrome.
Yes.
It's a real medical condition.
Real
Let me
one.
repeat, the New
Real
York Times.
medical.
It's when you sit around all day, like all of you are here, at the office, in the car, at the Newsfeed Cafe, in the couch, so much so you develop a very real disorder. The technical name is gluteal amnesia that can make you more susceptible to hamstring tears, shin splints, and arthritis in the knees. We wanted to bring it to your attention. In a minute, I'm going to tell you what you can do to cure it, but it's a serious thing. And I repeat what we've said through the line is, sitting is the new smoking, Marjorie. What are we doing right now, you and I?
We are standing up,
We
Jim.
are standing, Marjorie.
We're warding off dead butt syndrome.
We are. One of us is.
We were ahead of the game.
We were really ahead of the game. Anybody have anything to say about this?
Well, we have a few comments I can share with you.
What are
This
they?
is from Callum Borges, who's a Wall Street Journal columnist, used to be at the Boston Globe. He texted to us, and he said...
He texted us?
Yes, he did.
That's
he
sad.
said, I knew I could count on Jim, Marjorie, and you, Jamie, to tackle important issues like dead butt syndrome. I just wish I thought of it for column first. Maybe I'll write about Botox for the buttocks next.
But by the way, obviously he's jealous because we picked up on an important issue.
He jealous. And Botox for the buttocks, Colin Borges, might be a good idea because apparently the ideal buttocks is supposed to have dimples in it. I didn't know that until this morning.
I don't
Jim.
think it has anything to do with dead butt syndrome, by the way.
It
Do you know
does not.
that?
It does not have. It does not.
Can I tell you, I don't know if you guys are worried about it here in the audience. I'm going to read from the New York Times.
Mhm.
Here's what you're supposed to do, and any of you who want to do it is fine. You should stand every 30 to 50 minutes.
Right.
Some of you have been, so feel free to stand if you want. Anybody want to stand? Fine. Some of you are standing. Thank one woman in the back. And let me speak to you then. You should gently tap your butt cheeks with your fingertips. You're not going that far? The New York Times said you should do it. No? In any case, sitting is a real crisis. And the argument they make here is it literally allows your
Whatever it is.
Your glutes to forget. That's why it's called gluteal amnesia. To do what they can do, and without them, walking and virtually everything else is almost impossible.
Here's Earl and Marble. On the gluteal amnesia issue, I'm going to sit this one out.
Oh, that is so nice. Thank you
and
very much.
here's Renee in Dartmouth. I have dead butt syndrome after sitting and laying for a 5-day hospital stay to give birth in June. My baby is now 3 months old, but I still don't have full feeling in my right buttock.
Okay,
Now,
let me tell you.
people are very concerned about this, Jim.
What is it?
You may not know that Spanx are the things a lot of people
I know
buy.
exactly what it is.
Women,
It's like a girdle.
it could be a full body kind of thing. Because people were worried about flat butts that kind of where your butt kind of disappears if you're too thin and you get older. You get these booty boosters, and what you do is you put them on your rear end if you want to get dressed up going to a wedding or something like that. But the problem is, at least for those of us who may have tried them, the booty boosters, when you get up, when you stand up, going to a wedding, I did. You stand up, but the problem is they're not even. So obviously you put the
one
booty
up
booster,
and one down?
one cheek is here, one cheek is down there. They're very difficult to adjust.
So you only
I don't know
bought
if
a
they
booty
work that
booster
well.
for one cheek?
I know you buy them for two, but they're not connected.
Can I tell you something else? In a moment of seriousness, because I'm afraid people are going to dismiss this as BS. According to this New York Times situation, if you sit a large amount of your day, which most of us unfortunately do, it increases your overall mortality prospects 16%.
That's right.
It increases the likelihood of cardiovascular disease by 34%, which is really huge, no?
You want to have a glute bridge, Jim. That's very
I don't
important.
know what a glute bridge is.
Well, that's the exercises you do to lie on your back and lift your hips in the air. It's a glute bridge. It's supposed to ward it off. But some people are very grateful that we're talking about this
Why is
today.
that?
This is an anonymous texter who says, how timely. I was just this week about to pull the trigger on the purchase of a $1,200 Hag Capisco saddle seat chair to reduce my buttock stress. But now the person feels as though they should maybe not do that. They should build a glute bridge, or they should try doing a glute bridge instead.
Okay, so we're out of time, and as you're introducing our next guest or saying what's coming up, in the spirit of the discussion, we're going to play a song you and I used to play a lot on our old radio show. It's that legendary Back That Thang Up. Go ahead, Marjorie, take it away. Who's coming up, Marjorie?
The governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Maura Healey. She's not here yet,
Disgraced
thank God.
ourselves, thank
But
you.
we're going to talk to her up next. You can take. She's going to take our questions and yours, and you can email her at 877-301-8970 or text her as well. You're listening to Boston Public Radio live from the Boston Public Library.
I'm sweating in the drawers, yeah, all along, yeah. Wanna walk it like a dog, yeah. Break you off, yeah. Get money, go get yours, yeah. That for sure, yeah.
The Moth is returning to Boston this October for live storytelling, and GBH has your tickets to see it. It's true, immersive stories told live at the Wilbur Theater. Learn more and reserve your tickets now at gbh.org/moth.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Hebrew Senior Life, a Harvard Medical School affiliate empowering seniors to reach their full potential through senior living, healthcare, aging research, and more. You can consider Hebrew Senior Life at allweareforyou.org. And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Conjuring the Spirit World, Art, Magic, and Mediums. Open September 14th. For tickets and more information, you can visit pem.org/spiritworld.
I'm Hannah Loss, BPR producer, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. In a couple of minutes, Governor Maura Healey joins us here for her September Ask the Governor appearance. What is she doing to protect the patients and workers at Steward Healthcare? And why is hospital CEO Ralph De La Torre still in charge?
And how she works with the legislature to get things done while they are on their 5-month vacation. Have your own burning question for the governor? Call or text with your questions, 877-301-8970, or better yet, come on down to the Boston Public Library and ask Healey in person. Governor Maura Healey next, Boston Public Radio 89.7, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News Morning, Shemaine Cruz from member station WABE reports their lawyers declined to seek bail.
Colt Gray appeared in front of the judge for the first time at a courthouse an hour away from Atlanta, shackled at the wrist and ankles, and dressed in khaki pants and a green shirt. The judge overseeing the case advised him of his rights and told him that because of his age, he is not eligible for the death penalty. Instead, the maximum penalty for the 4 counts of felony murder he faces is life without parole. His father, 54-year-old Colin Gray, faces up to 180 years in prison. Authorities say he allowed his son to possess the weapon used in the shooting. He has been charged with second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, and cruelty to children. Their next court appearance will be in December. For NPR News, I'm Shemaine Cruz in Atlanta.
Former President Donald Trump heads to the battleground state of North Carolina today. First, he spoke from New York City, where his lawyers are appealing a $5 million sexual abuse verdict.
This is a disgraceful case, and disgraceful in particular because it's about a former president of the United States who is now leading in the polls to be the president again.
The polls show a tight race. Trump is set to debate his opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, next week. Officials with New York City's police department say they are cooperating with a federal probe that appears to include senior aides to Mayor Eric Adams. NPR's Brian Mann reports.
The FBI searched homes and seized cell phones from a number of leading NYPD figures and officials in Mayor Eric Adams' administration, including the first deputy mayor and the deputy mayor for public safety. In a statement sent to NPR member station WNYC, the NYPD says it's aware of an investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office and is fully cooperating. Mayor Adams appeared last night on Fox 5 New York.
I would love to engage in a good conversation around this, but it would just be irresponsible for me. You know, as a former law enforcement person, I know, allow the reviews to take their course, and that is what I'm doing.
It's not yet clear what prompted the federal investigation, and no charges have been filed. Brian Mann, NPR News, New York.
China says it will no longer allow overseas adoptions. A foreign ministry spokesperson says it's to be, quote, in line with international trends. Family adoptions are exempt. Since 1992, China has sent some 160,000 children abroad for adoptions, about half in the U.S. China had a one-child policy until 2015, but now, with one of the lowest birth rates globally, it's been trying to encourage women to have more children. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Harvard's top leadership has updated its guidance on doxing and online harassment. In an email signed by Harvard President Alan Garber and other top administrators, the new rules follow months of criticism from some affiliates that the university failed to adequately address severe doxing attacks against its own students. The email also encouraged affiliates who've experienced doxing to contact their designated resources at the respective schools to enforce the university's policies. The updated doxing and online harassment guidance was also endorsed by the Harvard Corporation. That's the university's highest governing body. And university leadership says they'll revise the guidance in 2 years following feedback from faculty, students, and staff. The Aquinnah Powwow takes place this weekend at the Aquinnah Circle overlooking the southern shore of Martha's Vineyard. The event includes traditional drumming, singing, and dancing, and a lot more. Bettina Washington, Tribal History Preservation Officer of the Wampanoag Tribe of Gayhead, Aquinnah, was reached at the site where the event is being set up.
We actually had powwows on the island back in the 30s, and Mashpee would come, Narragansett would come, people from Herring Pond, and it was a way that people got together. We got to see one another, pass along information.
The powwow runs Saturday and Sunday with gates opening at 11 a.m. both days. 73 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for dedicated and forward-thinking individuals to join their growing team. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Just a couple of seconds, we're going to talk to Governor Maura Healey. She's with us to take our questions and yours. Our number is 877-301-8970. Go ahead, Jim.
And on Monday, the GM at the T is going to be with us for an hour to take your questions. Tuesday, the mayor will join us from 11 to 12. Doris Kearns-Goodwin is also going to be here Tuesday. And we're actually going to meet your Secretary of Transportation next Friday. Governor Monica Tibbetts-Nutt is going to join us at the library.
That's great.
Speaking of the governor, she is Maura Healey. She is here for the September edition of Ask the Governor. As Marjorie said, you can call her or text her at 877-301-8970, or if you're at the library, Aiden, our colleague, is sitting right over there. Walk over to Aiden, and if your question passes the laugh test or some test, there's a good chance you get to talk to the governor directly. Governor, it's good to see you.
Great to see you,
Thanks
Jim
so much
and
for being
Marjorie.
here.
So, Governor, housing is top of mind for so many people all across the state of Massachusetts and the country, too. We hear Kamala Harris talking about it all the time. So tell us about what is in this $5.2 billion housing bond bill.
Yeah, I'm really proud of this. One of our top priorities was to get this housing bill done, and we got it done. I signed it into law not long ago. And basically, it's to address the real crisis that we have in our state that, frankly, is a crisis across the country. People can't afford rent. They can't afford down payments. They can't afford to buy a home. And so we needed to address that by building more homes. And that's what this bill does. And it does it in a variety of ways. It allows people to, for example, build out accessory dwelling units, which is sort of, use your attached garage. You can convert it into an apartment that you could rent out or and make
Granny
available.
flat.
I wasn't going to say that, but that's, and it's very popular. And actually, it's been a really surefire way to increase the number and the availability of units. So it does a variety of things. It establishes a fund to help developers. So we're incenting the production of not just affordable homes, but also homes for middle-class families. And, for me, the way I look at it as governor is I've got an obligation to make our state as competitive as possible. One of the challenges we face as a state is that cost of housing is high.
Yep.
And so really this is about building more homes, taking properties that are not currently in use, whether they're empty office buildings, whether they're old rundown mills, whether they're state properties that just are not being utilized right now, and converting them to housing. So there's a variety of ways that we're going to be able to get there. Huge piece of legislation. I'm really proud of the team for the work on this, and it's about bringing more homes online so that we can lower costs and make housing more affordable.
This is obviously a big plan, and it's a multi-year plan. But other than the accessory dwelling units, which, by the way, what this does is says that a local community can't block. This is essentially as of right on the state level, which I think is fabulous, and obviously you do too. Beyond that, what are the things where people will see immediate results from this? I don't mean immediate tomorrow. I mean in the near future as opposed to out years, Governor.
Well, there's going to be funding made available to developers. There's going to be funding available to rehabilitate and bring online an estimated 40,000 units of public housing right now that are sitting unused simply because they've fallen into such a state of disrepair. Remember, Jim, we're able to leverage the federal funds that we've been chasing, that we've been bringing back to the state, to the tune of about $7 billion already. Some of that money is for housing infrastructure. So you're absolutely right that there's a short term and there's a long-term play here. But I'm excited. I just came from a cabinet meeting with my housing secretary, and we're talking about the things that are going to get implemented this fall, so that we can start to move. And it's a Massachusetts problem, but as you know, Kamala Harris, one of the things she's made a top part of her platform is recognizing this as a national issue. Hopefully we'll see interest rates come down in the next month or so, but she's got a strong plan to make housing more affordable.
Before we get to calls and texts, and the lines are full, but you can text anytime, or you can just come on down at 877-301-8970. From very good news to not such good news, Stewart Healthcare. I think everybody knows that 6 of the 8 hospitals have been bought. Carney and Nashoba Valley closed, I guess, over the weekend, Saturday morning. A number of members of even your own party, people like Congresswoman Presley and Lynch, have been critical of the state, I guess, of not doing enough to keep those remaining 2 hospitals open. What do you say to them? Why were you not able to pull off on those 2 places what you're able to pull off elsewhere?
Yeah. Well, what I would say is look at the mess that we inherited a year ago. We got word a year ago that Stewart, which operates 8 hospitals in Massachusetts, was going bankrupt. It's been well documented what happened there. Really, the greed, mismanagement by Ralph De La Torre and leadership at Stewart. They'd run these hospitals into the ground, stripped these assets, and basically left us in a terrible, terrible situation. But here's the good news. As we stand here a year later, Jim, working with my team, and I give great credit to Kate Walsh and Robbie Goldstein, our Secretary of Health and Human Services, and our Commissioner of Public Health, we have been able to save 6 of the 8 hospitals. They have been transferred to responsible new operators. That's good for care and good for patients, because this involves hundreds of thousands of patients. And we preserved over nearly 14,000 jobs, which is also something really important to me. When it comes to Carney and Nashoba, we did not, unfortunately, have any hospital willing to come in and help take over operations there. So that was the difference with those 2 hospitals.
And there's nothing else you could do in your estimation if there was no credible buyer.
You need a hospital. You need somebody to operate a hospital.
How about Boston Medical Center?
Here's what Boston Medical is already. They're taking over and running other hospitals. But here's what's important with Carney. Okay, the fact of the matter is that in June, Carney had about 13 of 83 beds filled. So Carney, I'm a big believer in equity, but I want people getting access to good care. And sadly, for years now, Carney has not been utilized. It has fallen into disrepair. Here's what needs to happen with Carney. And, I'm going to support efforts on Carney and bringing people together on this. We need to think about that neighborhood and what that neighborhood actually needs in terms of health care, long-term care, primary care, urgent care. What's the best way to serve that neighborhood? And I think that's something that I'm committed to, the mayor's committed to, and we'll work on that. Now, Nashoba up in air, similarly, I don't, it bothers me, particularly as somebody who grew up in a rural community. You don't want to leave that area high and dry. And so, we're going to be convening and trying to figure out, even though no hospital operator came forward to operate them, and we tried, we are going to have a conversation about what it is that area needs and what we can supply. In the meantime, I will tell you that we are making sure that we have ambulances available 24/7 with a higher standard of care, and that The doctor's offices that are on that Nashoba campus, they continue to be open. So we're doing what we can in the interim to support, but it's a challenging situation anytime there's a hospital closure. And again, I just want to go back to where we were a year ago. We were going to see 8 hospitals disappear, close overnight. We were able to save 6 to 8 of them, and I give big credit to my team and the leadership there in working to get these deals done, to save hospitals, to save jobs, and to protect patients' access to care.
2 very quick questions, then we'll get to the calls. Do you think, Ralph, based on what you know, have heard as governor, and what you've read, has Ralph Delatorre committed crimes?
I mean, I think so, but that'll be good for what I've said. What I've said, and again, I don't know all the facts, but what I've said is that there needs to be accountability here. I'm glad he's the subject of investigation right now. He should be held accountable. He should go to jail. And anybody else who worked along with him should pay the price. And, it's just terrible what he did to people because of his greed and his huge ego and hubris.
One last thing about Delatorre. Before we do, by the way, Judge Merchant in the 34 felony case announced minutes ago that he will delay the sentencing of Donald Trump, which was scheduled for September 18th, until after the election. Before I get back to Stewart, any reflection on that?
No, just saying that.
Okay. Last question. Senator Warren was with us yesterday. Here's one of the many things she had to say about Ralph Delatorre.
What the heck is Ralph Delatorre doing still in charge of Stewart Hospitals?
Yeah.
The chain is now in bankruptcy. That means there is a bankruptcy judge that has some oversight. But Delatorre is the guy who's still in there. He's got access to all of the information. He's the one negotiating the deals on which hospitals are closed. And my view on this is, no, he should be replaced.
Should the bankruptcy judge remove Delatorre? Do you support that?
He's already removed. The Transformation Committee runs it. This is in bankruptcy right now. It has, it's out of Ralph Delatorre's hands, and he's got to be focused on lawyering up. Because he is going to be investigated and prosecuted and good.
Delatorre has no decision-making power anymore?
No, this is in the hands of lenders and Wall Street, and lawyers. This is who we've been dealing with, and people have been working really hard at this for weeks and months. You've got a bankruptcy judge who's done a good job with this. You've got creditors. I mean, it's bankruptcy, Jim, so it's the creditors who are controlling the action here. And, we were able to work with hospital systems. I'm pleased. We've got nonprofit hospital systems coming in to take over for a super shady, greedy for-profit that is now gone by the boards. That is Stewart Healthcare, and that's a good thing. So, that's who we have been working with, are the creditors, the lenders in this. Remember, we worked with them so that we got them to write down all those leases. Remember, one of the deals was that these hospitals had lease agreements with...
they sold the property and then leased it back.
They sold the property and leased it back. So we took care of that, wiped that out. That is no more, so that's a good thing. And so these new people who are taking over, these nonprofits, are going to be able to operate in the normal course. And again, with respect to the couple communities, and my heart goes out to communities with it that saw closure, particularly the Air and Nashoba community, we're gonna work to figure out what we need to do, and the kind of care we need to provide there. And so, I think it's a terrible situation, but we end up with better health care a year later on this side of it. We really do. I believe it's better for the workers, and it's better for patients, and better for the stability of the market.
We're getting a lot of text messages about people worried about their medical records at Stewart. They will be, I assume, able to still get those.
Absolutely, and that's why it was so important, Marjorie, to make sure that we had responsible operators taking over. And just so people are clear, we have had staff from the state Department of Public Health on site now for weeks, for months, making sure that the right things were done, including to this point about records. People need to be able to access records. As you know, we had safety monitoring and the like. So, we'll be there to see people through this. And again, I can't say enough about the leadership of Kate Walsh and Robbie Goldstein in what was a very, very difficult situation. And I don't know anyone else who could have navigated us through this really difficult situation, working with new hospital operators, working with other systems, working with our colleagues in labor, because there's a lot of jobs impacted here, and really figuring out what we needed to do to get to this side of things. So, that's care that we save for 330,000 patients in Massachusetts and nearly 14,000 jobs. And I think that's a very good story a year later after the terrible doings of Ralph de la Torre.
Let's go to the phone calls. Catherine from Lynn, you are first this hour with Governor Maura Healey. Go ahead, Catherine. Thanks
Hi,
for
Catherine.
calling.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, Governor Healey. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you for all your hard work in making our Commonwealth a better place to live and raise our families. My husband is Dean Mashad. He's facing deportation for texting his ex in 2020, and he's been in ICE detention for almost a year. We petitioned for a pardon, and we received a unanimous favorable recommendation from the Advisory Board of Pardons. Can you please help us keep our families together and grant our pardon? We have 4 children ranging from ages 2 to 15, and we're hoping that their dad can come home for Christmas.
Catherine, thank you for your call. Governor.
Thank you very much for calling in, Catherine. And I bet if you stay on the line, you'd be willing to give us more in terms of your information about that, and my team will follow up. And pardon applications is something that does come to me once it goes through that board that you just referenced. So I wish you and your husband and your kids, all 4 of them, the very best.
Catherine, don't go away. We're going to take your info and give it to the governor immediately. Thank you for your call and good luck.
Jasper in Marlborough, you're on with the governor.
Hi, Jasper.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so I have pleasure to speak with you once again, Governor Healey. I have a question once again about gender-affirming care access here in Massachusetts, especially because of many of the bans that have been enacted across the country. I do know that even with the people here in the Commonwealth, there's also patients coming from other places in the country, and even for people who live here, there is an accessibility issue. Some people might have difficulty having access to care. What is or can be done to facilitate access to care here in Massachusetts?
Yeah. Well, you know what? If you stay on the line, Jasper, we'll get your contacts and you can talk with our team and we can give you some specifics. But let me just say this. Massachusetts, we have laws in place that prevent discrimination, including in receiving health care. We are a state and we're in a team, an administration that has supported gender-affirming care and people's access to gender-affirming care. And we're lucky to be in Massachusetts where we have a lot of great healthcare providers who provide that care. And so your rights are protected, your freedoms are protected, including access to needed health care. And you're absolutely right that there are people and families who come from other states where they don't have those rights, they don't have those freedoms, they are discriminated against, and they come to Massachusetts because we provide that care.
Jasper, don't go away. We're going to take your information too. You held a press conference, I believe, this morning while we're on the air to talk about new wind farm developments. Did I get that right?
Yes.
What happened?
Big deal.
Okay.
Actually, we'll look back. This is a big day in Massachusetts history because today I was able to announce that we made the largest ever bid for 3 major wind projects off the coast of New England. As you know, we already have operating the country's largest utility-scale wind farm, and that's a big deal because we're a state that is about clean energy. We know we need power in this state. We need power to do what we want to do and for our economic growth and development. There's 2 ways to generate power. You can use fossil fuels, or you can go the route of renewables. And as an administration, and also as dictated by the legislature, we are all on board for renewables, right? And that means wind, it means hydro, it means solar, it means an array of things. And today, we were able to announce that we're going to do these 3 projects. They're going to power 1.6 million homes. They're going to create 12,000 great-paying jobs here in Massachusetts. They will have project labor agreements, so they will be very good for labor and families. And it's going to generate billions in economic opportunity. So this is a really big deal. We did it, one of these, in conjunction with Rhode Island, because we've got to work together as New England states, as a region, to procure this energy, whether it's wind or hydro. And it follows, other things that we've been able to do. A couple weeks ago, remember, we had $400 million given to us, we applied for, given to us by the Biden-Harris administration to help us upgrade our grid so that as this wind and energy comes online and onshore, we're able to actually distribute it out to homes and businesses. And so, that's good. We had a major award earlier this summer, another $400 million for solar and to build out more solar arrays. So, Massachusetts, we have led in this space. We're going to continue to lead in this space. This is a big day because we set a stake in the ground. We're going big for wind. It is our future. And with that, it's going to bring a lot of jobs. It's going to bring a lot of industry because a lot of infrastructure will be built out, as it is now in New Bedford and Salem. It's going to be built out in Massachusetts to bring this energy online, and it's another example of how Massachusetts is leading.
The Globe had a piece the other day by Sabrinka Shankman. She was talking about fears that if Donald Trump is elected, he's a climate change denier, that the billions of dollars that Massachusetts is getting and will continue to get in federal clean energy money will be at risk. Is that right?
I think there's real fear about that. I mean, it's not just money for clean energy, but remember, Donald Trump wants to defund the Department of Education.
Right.
He wants to abolish it. So, you could go down the line, Health and Human Services, education, anything climate related. He already has said he would weaponize his office against political opponents. And, that puts people who have opposed him, who have sued him, who have fought him.
That's you.
In his sights. And so, there's so much at risk and at stake. I am really pleased with what we've been able to do so far the last couple of years with the Biden-Harris administration. I set up that Office of Federal Funds. I said we were going to chase every single federal dollar that we could. In just 20 months, we brought back nearly $7 billion in funding from the Biden-Harris administration for things like the Alston Modal Project on I-90, for the Cape Cod bridges, for so many transportation and infrastructure projects, for housing. So, we have benefited from this administration, and I know that we will continue to benefit from a Kamala Harris-Tim Walz administration. But it's a terrible situation, with Trump and what it means for our future, for energy independence in this country, to have the specter of a person who, he doesn't believe in wind power, It's pretty basic. And, he's already said he sat with all those oil executives and said, write me $1 billion check and you'll get whatever you want. That's a real fear.
So that money that they've already gotten through the Infrastructure Reduction or Inflation Reduction Act, that is at stake as well.
Well, I think that's already, we're working really hard to get that money, out the door and implemented in projects, right? So, I think about it more in terms of what is to come and future funding, because we're already making good use of the money that's come through the door.
One last thing on climate. One of the major pieces of legislation that the legislature left behind when it went on its 5-month vacation, or 5 months of not formal sessions, climate, economic development, climate. Mm-hmm. Is there any real prospect, considering they are not slam dunk kinds of things, that there can be a unanimous vote to get it to your desk?
I think so. I really am
climate
optimistic.
And economic development?
Yes, absolutely. And remember, look, we've been a state. We're known for a few things, Jim. We're number one in education. We're number one in innovation. We were just voted the number one state to raise a family, number one state to have a child, number one state to live in if you're a woman. We've got a lot of great things going for us. And one of the things that we've been known for as a state of innovation is life sciences, because remember, we made a big play for that years ago, and we are now the global hub of life sciences. So as governor, I've said we can do in climate tech what we did in life sciences. That's part of economic development. We've got more climate technology being researched and developed right here in Massachusetts than anywhere else in the world. And I think people see the economic benefit of that. We estimate that it'll yield a return of 12 or 16 to 1, making that investment. So I'm pretty confident, Jim, that we're going to get there and get there soon, because it builds on the work that we've done already in climate. We set up the first climate green bank dedicated toward affordable housing. We have the country's first climate chief. We've made huge investments in climate workforce in high schools right now, and everybody back to school. Hope everybody's adjusting, parents and kids and educators these first couple weeks. But we have high schools now that have career pathways in climate technology. And now that we've made community college free, we've got those kids able to go from high school to community college programs for free, building careers in climate-related technologies and workforce. So I'm really excited about it, and I think the economic development bill is just something that continues that.
Let's go to Susan in Norwell. You're on Boston Public Radio with the Governor of the Commonwealth. Hi there, Susan.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call.
Sure.
So I wanted to reach out in regards to the IM bill. And I'm assuming the governor knows a lot about this, but for the general public, this is about period poverty. So I am an educator. I teach at a local university. My daughter is a high school student. Both of us are on the board of something called Free Period. We are so grateful to the state for giving us a $500,000 grant last year, which we used immediately. We're talking within a week to distribute period products that we procured to schools all around our state. The state does not, I should say, there's requirement for there to be free period products in schools, prisons, or homeless shelters in our state. And through our research, we've done our own independent studies. We found that 1 in 5 menstruators they're missing up to a week of school every single month because they don't have access to products. Food stamps don't cover period products.
Susan, we got to get to a question. We got to get to a question for the governor, please.
The question is this. The question is that the IM bill made it through the Senate last year, and through our actions, we did as much as we could to solicit signatures and sending letters, but we couldn't get the IM bill brought up in the House for an election. Does the governor have any suggestions on how we can have our voices heard? This is a major need, and clearly the state supports it. But we can't get this IM bill the attention it needs for that second vote.
Susan, thank you very much.
Well, thanks for the call, Susan, and thank you for you and your daughter's advocacy on this. I think it's really important. I think that these products should be available and should be available for free, especially to our students. And, I too am aware of the studies that show students skipping school absentee because of this. And we need to do everything we can to address that. I recently was able to sign into law a historic maternal health bill, and I say that just because I really believe in doing all that we can for not just reproductive freedom, but access to healthcare, quality healthcare for girls and women. And with this maternal health bill, we were able to do something that hadn't been done before: expand access to midwifery and to doulas, to birth centers. There's new screening and treatment for postpartum depression, like really important stuff. And folks know that we already have the most robust protections in place anywhere in the country for patients and providers when it comes to abortion. So I say that because in a similar vein, we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can for our young people in particular, and I really support those efforts. And I would just say let's continue to work on it, and I look forward to working with the legislature on this, and also supporting the efforts of local communities and districts.
We got to take a break. Before we do, we want to recognize a group of kids from the Torret Montessori School sitting right there in the front that came with their teacher to see the governor of Massachusetts. Hey, you guys, raise your hands so people know who you are. How's she doing, by the way? How's she doing so far?
Thumbs up.
She's okay?
Okay.
Governor,
Well,
before we take a
welcome.
break, can I ask you one quick question?
Of course.
I heard somebody say, this is true, it's scandalous. I heard somebody say on TV last weekend that Donald Trump can't spell IVF. Do you know if that's true? Do you happen to know if that's true?
Yeah, I made that comment.
Yeah, you did make that
It was a little
comment.
pithy comment I made. Well, I was asked about his announcement last week that now all of a sudden, he's got religion and both supports IVF, right? This is the guy who was trying to, not only brags about overturning Roe and banning abortion, and we have these Trump abortion bans all over the country, including the one that's on the ballot in Florida, his home state, 6 weeks. Women, we don't even know if you're pregnant, right, at that 6 weeks. And he affirms his support for that ban. And at the same time, he comes out and says, oh, and I support IVF, and oh, by the way, insurers should pay. And it's just a bunch of BS. And, here's a guy who tried to repeal insurance coverage for Americans by time after time trying to take away the Affordable Care Act. And in fact, his playbook, Project 2025, in it is we're going to take away the Affordable Care Act. Oh, by the way, we're going to take away Social Security and Medicare. We're going to establish something called a fetal personhood, which would take away, access to potentially IVF, contraception, birth control, right? So, I was just trying to say, give me a break when it comes to Donald Trump on anything he says, because he'll say anything at any time, anywhere, if he perceives it to be convenient. But certainly, you cannot take him seriously on this. He has been the worst person when it comes to women's health and reproductive freedom in this country, ever. He is awful. So, as you can see, I get energized about this.
Fair enough. We got to take a break despite that.
Okay, Governor Maura Healey is with us till the top of the hour to take our questions and yours. You can reach her. We squeeze as many in as we can at 617-301-8970. I got that number wrong. 877-301-8970. Listening to Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
And today on The Culture Show, it's a Hollywood ending for West Newton Cinema, which has been saved from demolition. And is Boston on its way to becoming a boozier beantown, from a potential proposal to create open container districts to dramatically expanding the number of available liquor licenses? Plus, with famed con artist Anna Sorokin, joining the Dancing with the Stars dance card, is the reality show in the business of choreographing comebacks for convicts. That and more on The Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Hebrew Senior Life, a Harvard Medical School affiliate, empowering seniors to reach their full potential with a wide range of services. You can discover senior living, healthcare, aging research, and more at allweareforyou.org. And S&H Construction, committed to using craftsmanship and technical experience to build spaces that work, and professional management to guide you through the process. shconstruction.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library. We're halfway through Ask the Governor. Maura Healey is here, who is just spending some time with some very happy kids from the Torrent Montessori School. And they're a smiling bunch right there.
They're impressive. I just went over and had a chance to chat with them. Hold up your notebooks, guys. They're taking notes.
They're taking notes.
Yes.
I love it.
It's as good as any briefing I get. They're taking notes on what I say and the stats and what we're talking about. So awesome, you guys. Thank you for coming and maybe learning a little bit about what your government is doing or supposed to be doing for you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it too. Aaron in Cambridge, you are on with Governor Maura Healey. Thanks for calling.
Hey there.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Governor Healey, I am just so grateful to be able to get through to you, on the peerless format of Jim and Marjorie, whom we love.
Thank you.
You just mentioned biotech, and I completely understand that this is super important for, the Massachusetts economy. I'm all pro-scientific innovation. But I happen to be somebody who's enrolled in a drug trial, and I think that there's a lot of legal issues that arise with informed consents that we're made to sign when you participate in a drug trial. And obviously I'm happy to provide more information, but I'm wondering if your office or anybody whom you could point me to that I could sort of have a fuller discussion about, does your office have a role in regulating the actual practice of drug trials as they're implemented in our state? Thank you so much for your consideration.
Well, thank you for calling, and I hope whatever it is that's got you in the drug trial improves, and wish you good health. I'll tell you, we don't have a direct role, but if you stay on the line, we can get you the contact. I think about the Food and Drug Administration first off. I think about also U.S. Health and Human Services, and then also our state attorney general's office, particularly when it comes to to privacy issues and consent. So we'll make sure to give you those contacts, and I'm sure they'd be willing to and happy to hear your situation
Aaron, do
specifically.
not go away. As the governor said, stay on the line. We'll take your contact information and pass it along. And thank you so much for calling.
You know, Governor, people may know Sandra Birchmore. She was the young woman that was found dead in Canton a few years ago. The Massachusetts Medical Examiner's Office said she was a suicide. She was only 23 years old and she was pregnant. And the local authorities who investigated this, including the Norfolk County investigators that were involved in the same Karen Reed case, she was the one that allegedly ran over her boyfriend. The jury did not come to a conclusion on that case. In any case, the FBI apparently thinks this wasn't a suicide, this was a murder, and that the police officer who was involved with her, actually may have been the father of her kid, was involved in staging this to look like a suicide. So it makes you a little nervous about what's going on with the Canton Police, the Massachusetts Medical Examiner's Office, and the Norfolk County investigators. Did the medical examiner get this wrong, or how can we have confidence in these investigations on the heels, especially of Karen Reed and the state police saying awful things about Karen Reed, the defendant?
I mean, from the days that the story first broke, I mean, it was a while ago now, about the alleged horrific conduct of this Stoughton police officer against this young woman, and the grooming of her, and the way he took advantage of such a vulnerable person. And you know, I just remember at the time just being horrified by it, disgusted by it. You know, anything like that has got to be fully investigated, and perpetrators have got to be held accountable. And that's still my view. So this guy, whoever else is involved, I'm glad that the U.S. Attorney's Office is investigating, and I want justice done for Sandra Birchmore and for her family. In terms of what actually happened, I mean, that's why there needs to be an investigation. I know that the medical office will fully cooperate with that, and I expect others to as well. So we'll just have to see. But to me, the important thing is that something was identified here as wrong, as not right, and that there will be a full investigation, and that there should be accountability and justice for Sandra Birchmore's family. It's a terrible situation.
Has the medical examiner concluded that they were wrong in this instance, and that the U.S. Attorney's Office is on the right track?
I don't know. I think we need to hear more from the medical examiner's office about this, and what the U.S. Attorney's Office has uncovered in its investigation.
Let's go to Jeannie.
I totally support that.
Jeannie in Norfolk, you're on with the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. Hi.
Oh, this is a great follow-up. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Thank you for calling.
So I hear that we are getting a new Colonel Noble. I thought, I'm wondering why you chose this particular man.
Well, thanks for your call, Jeannie. As folks know, we had an opening, and I appointed a search committee. They undertook a nationwide search and a thorough vetting process, and made a recommendation to me, and I chose Geoff Noble to be the next colonel because I think he brings the right experience and professionalism and attitude to this position. I expect he will do great things and continue to support, as I do, the men and women of the Massachusetts State Police. I have also expressed my gratitude for Jack Mon, who has served as colonel during this transition period. I asked him to step in when there was this vacancy, and Colonel Mon has done a really terrific job, and I have great respect and admiration for him. It looks like right now Colonel Noble will take over come October, and I look forward to the work that he will do with the team there in making sure that the men and women of the state police are supported with the resources that they need, and that they will be there to continue to serve the people of this state.
Governor, I'm hoping the colonel can hire a few people to come in and help him, because he's coming in from New Jersey to a state police that's had a lot of difficulty over time, people getting arrested, all that kind of thing. There's been a lot of scandals involving the state cops. So I worry about a guy who's all alone, standing up against all of this history here. Can he get a posse to come with him to kind of be his...
I think the good news, and I appreciate the comments that Colonel Mon has made in this transition. He set the tone for this and has asked for not just cooperation, but collaboration. And I think we'll see continued collaboration with the existing command staff, no doubt, and Colonel Noble will be empowered to bring in the people that he sees fit. He is certainly, though he's He spent time in Massachusetts. He was a Massachusetts
Yes,
cop
yeah.
way back.
Nantucket, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's summertime.
Anybody's, I think anyone coming into that role is very mindful as a leader that, morale of the team is very important to make sure you're working to build that chemistry and create that positive, constructive atmosphere. And I have every confidence that he will do that, and I have every confidence that the men and women of the state police will rise to the moment.
Okay, the number is 877-301-8970. Governor, when you were at the convention, working, speaking, campaigning, whatever you're doing out there, for a minute, there were reports that the auditor was going to be the acting governor because you were out of town, the lieutenant governor was out of town. The assumption was Secretary of State, who's next in line, was going to be out of town, but it turns out it was a mistake, and the next in line would have been DeZoglio. What she said, even though she said she wouldn't have signed it because she thought it was inappropriate as an acting governor, which she never attained, was an executive order barring non-disclosure agreements in many state settlement agreements. And when she said she wouldn't have done it anyway, she then went on to say she was hoping that the real governor, she didn't call you the real governor, but you are the real governor, that the real governor would sign such an executive order. Would you?
Right now, my practice is and has been not to do NDAs, and so that's been my position on it. We'll see what comes about in terms of the ballot question and the like, but that's been my position, and we'll continue
Ballot
to
question as to what?
There's a ballot question about the auditor right now and her powers.
About her power to audit.
Yeah. Yep.
But that doesn't speak to NDAs and state agencies.
No, it's a different. You're right. It's a different issue, but it's just something that the auditors raised. So, in terms of where we are with agreements and how we do things, that's how we do things out of the administrative agency.
Would you like to see no NDAs throughout all state agencies in the state?
I think, look, this is me putting back on my lawyer hat as AG. There are instances where people request NDAs, for proprietary reasons, for their own confidentiality reasons, right? So, to me, there hasn't been a hard and fast rule. One thing I'm clear about is I want transparency, though, when it comes to the actions of a state agency, right? And to be forthcoming about that. That's how we try to operate.
Rebecca, you're on the South Shore. You're on with the governor, Maura Healey. Hey.
Hey, how are you?
We're good.
Hi, Governor Healey. I am honored to talk to you today. I'm a certified organic farmer here in South Shore,
Great.
down here in Plimpton, Mass. I've been certified organic for several decades. We are having a major water problem down here on the South Shore with PFAS. We all are on, 200,000 of us down here are on Plymouth Sole Source Aquifer. With the massive sand mining that's going on here under the ruse of agricultural laws, but it's being trucked out all over the place. That aquifer filters our water. And I believe laws are being broken while these trucks are heading down the highway. But my well, I'm very concerned about my well. I had to fork out, without using government funds, $7,000 to make sure that my water, which I water my crops and animals with, is pure. And we are a dying breed of farmers here on the South Shore, as land is unavailable to farm. So, except for the cranberry growers that are hauling out all this sand. So I was wondering what we're going to do about all this PFAS problem down here. The surrounding towns to me, which border my town, all are shut down with PFAS problems. They can't deliver clean
Rebecca,
water.
let's hear it. PFAS are the forever chemicals, which people have been talking a lot about. What's your response to Rebecca, Governor?
Well, a couple of things. Rebecca, thank you for what you do. It's awesome. Organic farming here in Massachusetts, it's fantastic. And know that you've got the full support of our commissioner at the Department of Agricultural Resources, Ashley Randall, who is a farmer herself. So, Rebecca, hang on the line and let us make sure you're connected with her to see if there are other ways that there are programs in the state can help you in what you're doing. In terms of the PFAS, Rebecca, yeah, it's a nightmare. PFAS is horrible, right? I signed a PFAS bill a week or two ago with the firefighters to ban PFAS from their gear because firefighters were getting sick wearing this PFAS gear that contains PFAS. It's a national issue. It's going to require a heck of a lot of money in terms of what we're going to need to remediate. But in the meantime, let me make sure I flag this for my team in the office, and let them follow up with you specific to this aquifer and the issue that you're raising.
Don't go away, Rebecca. We'll get your info.
We've had a lot of climate texts today. Someone texted earlier saying they were concerned because the New Bedford water treatment plant is leaching, sewage, and the Conservation Law Foundation has been in court with the Hyannis sewage treatment plant because they're leaching stuff into the waterways down there.
It's infrastructure. It's money. I mean, that's why we proposed bills that we were able to get done around a disaster relief recovery fund, because when there are big storms, what we've seen is we've got infrastructure that's just too old, that hasn't been kept up with. And as a state, we want to try to provide support to our local municipalities who really can't afford to fix some of this stuff, Marjorie. But I totally hear that concern out there, and that's why we're doing that. It's also why we've continued to apply for federal funds and helped cities and towns apply for federal funds that will help them make these repairs and renovations. Infrastructure is super, super important.
And does the housing, the other theme that's coming through today is people are worried that not just the usual NIMBYism about the housing, but that to create more housing, you need to cut down all these trees. So the trees that are supposed to be absorbing some of the bad stuff are going to be gone. And is there a balanced thought about that?
I don't know. There's not a lot of people building wood using wood, to be honest. I mean, and
not to build the houses.
Clearing space.
Clearing space.
Oh no, look. First of all, we're committed to our forests. We're the first administration to actually map our forests. We know how important forests are for decarbonization, right? And we've got a plan for that. But one of the things about our housing plan, remember, is we're trying to create more housing and incent more housing around transportation hubs, right? Around, and leaving municipalities free to decide where they want to zone and build out this stuff. But it's to do it in a way that makes sense. There's not just existing property. Even look around some of our T stations. There's also existing buildings, infrastructure, old mills that aren't being used, state-owned property that isn't being used, stuff that we can turn around and turn into housing. And that's part of what we're trying to incent, including cleaning up and making available public housing and bringing units back online. So I appreciate the concern, but I don't see that as a concern with what we're doing.
Let's go to Roslyn Dale. Angela, you're on with Maura Healey, Governor of Massachusetts. Hi.
Hi, Governor Healey. Jim and Marjorie, thanks so much for taking my call.
Thanks for calling.
So I'm a mom of 3 teens, 2 BPS high schoolers, a UMass student, and a legal services attorney.
Oh.
And I wanted to ask about your support, thank you very much for it in the past, about the Massachusetts Child and Family Tax Credit. So right now, I don't know how many people know about it, but every single kid under 13 is eligible for $310. And you had proposed $600. And we had gone to the hearings that you were at and brought high schoolers, teenagers, to talk about what their families went through during COVID and how much teenagers could use this help as well. So that was one question I had about kids. And another question I had was about mixed status families who are ineligible for the really big earned income tax credit that 10 states have changed their policies and made their tax codes more inclusive, but we haven't in Massachusetts. And this is for families where they're working, but they don't get the same tax credits that their neighbors do because maybe one of the parents has a IRS-issued tax ID number instead of a Social Security number.
Angela, can we have, because we're running low on time, those are 2 good questions. Let the governor address them both if she can.
Yeah.
And thank you much for your
Angela,
call.
thank you so much, and good for you. 3 children doing great things. So please give them my best and wishes for continued success. Let me say, I'll start in reverse. I think we should address that issue of mixed families because it's a matter of equity. And kids are kids, young people are young people, and we should make sure everybody's getting access to things sort of equally there. In terms of our child tax credit, thank you so much for testifying, because with your help, we were able to pass, and I was able to sign into law, the most generous child tax credit in the entire country. I am proud of Massachusetts' leadership on that. I also will note one of the things that Kamala Harris is proposing is a $6,000 child tax credit. That's what Kamala Harris is doing, in part because Tim Walz, her running mate, did it in Minnesota to such good effect. And so they know what they're doing. They know what works for families. They know actually how to support families and support the middle class. And so I just mentioned that. I think it's important. And look, there's other things that we've done, Angela. We'll continue to work on that and ways that we can better help young people as they age. I'm pleased that we make school breakfast and lunch free for students everywhere in the state, that we have free community college, that we've also worked to lower tuition at our state colleges and universities. So, every day I'm very mindful, Angela, of people needing to make ends meet and pay the electric bill, pay the grocery bill, pay for transportation, parking, clothes, everything. And so whatever we can do to drive down your costs is really something that we're focused on. But I'll stay on the line because I know our team would love to follow up with you.
Angela, stick around. Did you say Minnesota? Did you just do that?
What's wrong with Minnesota?
No, Minnesota is what people say if they're from Minnesota. Is that what you did?
I didn't know.
Well, you did beautiful.
I don't know. I'm from New Hampshire.
It's like
Maybe
a
there's like a
Walzian
thing.
kind of thing. It was quite beautiful.
He's
there,
a great
Governor.
guy, by the way.
Tell us.
Oh, love Tim Walz. I've served with him as governor the last 2 years. He is he is the real deal. He is what you see. He is, I remember Joanna and I went to our first National Governors Association meeting, and, he knew it was the first one. He went out, we was in Atlantic City of all places because the New Jersey governor was hosting us. So they had this thing out on the boardwalk, afterwards. And so he saw us kind of standing, saw Joanna standing alone. He said, he came right up to her. He said, "Hey, want to go do bumper cars?" And so, off we went with Tim Walz doing bumper cars. And, that's who he is, How'd
that go?
Oh, we had a ball. It's fun. You do bumper cars, right?
You
Isn't
kidding
it
me?
great? And I don't even get to drive anymore. So I was like, yes, I get to drive and bash into people.
Joanna is Joanna Lidgate, your partner.
My partner,
for those
yeah.
who don't know, go ahead.
And Tim is great, and he is that guy who knows how to. He'll change your oil. He'll replace your screen when somebody's dog runs through it. He cares about so much, and he brings great depth to this ticket. It is a great ticket. It's a ticket that cares about people. I'll be up in New Hampshire this weekend campaigning for them, alongside my campaigning for Joyce Craig, who should be the next governor in New Hampshire. That primary is on Tuesday, but we've got a lot of work to do over the next 60-something days to deliver for this country, to deliver for our future, and to be where we need to be.
We only have a minute left, and I know you wanted to spend a decent amount of time. We'll give it to you right now, expressing your interest in being Attorney General of the United States. Go ahead, take all the time you want, Governor. How happy are you with that question?
Oh, it doesn't bother me. I don't have any interest, and I have only interest in being governor of Massachusetts. So other jobs don't interest me. And the other thing is I'm focused on winning, because what I'm focused on, what is best for Massachusetts, what is best for this country, and that is making sure that Donald Trump is nowhere near the Oval Office. We elect Kamala Harris. We elect Tim Walz. Great to see Liz Cheney and others come on board. This is about putting America first, putting our country first. We've got all sorts of differences. We can debate and work through that, but this is about decency. It's about protecting freedom. It's about protecting democracy and our future. So anybody and everybody, I ask you to get out and do all you can for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I know them both. I serve with both. They're great people, and you may not agree with everything, but you should have no confusion about where their heart and their head is directionally, as compared to Donald Trump, who is only about himself, will always be about himself. He is corrupt. He is a fraud. He is a scam artist. He's surrounded himself by the worst common denominator, and having worked hard to recover through this, we're now on the path we need to be for leadership here and global leadership abroad. We cannot go backwards. So get out there and work hard for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Governor Maura Healey, thank you as always for your time. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Ditto what everything said, what Jim just said. Governor, thank you again for coming in. And thank you all for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thank you to the people that came down to the Boston Public Library, and the kids from the Montessori school that came to see the governor. And keep up with us.
They really are
24/7.
taking notes. It is
They are taking
incredible.
notes. Very impressive. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page. Monday, we're going to be joined by the head of the MBTA, Philip Eng, the general manager there, political commentator Anad Girdadas, NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan, and the Reverends Irene Monroe and Emma G. Price III. I want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John LeClaw Parker, our executive producer, Jane Bologna. Special thanks to BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Kevin Pace Jr., Juan Jose Cadena, and Sandra Lopez Burke. Our host at the Newsfeed Cafe over there. Great Cobb salad today, Jim.
Great Cobb salad.
And the gang over at the Lenox Hotel. The Culture Show, their week in...
What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show. Next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Rockland Trust Bank, committed to helping individuals and local businesses work towards their financial goals by providing financial advice and resources. More at rocklandtrust.org. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. Looking for some tender love and lawn care? Get some classic gardening tips from the original Victory Garden series and stream full episodes on the GBH YouTube channel.
Could be getting boozier, from a dramatic expansion of available liquor licenses to the city considering open container districts, all in an effort to boost Boston's nightlife. Plus, is Dancing with the Stars more like Dancing with the Stars and Stripes, as in Prison Stripes? With con artist Anna Delvey or Sorokin on the dance card, is the reality show in the business of choreographing comebacks for convicts. And Adele, famous for mega hits like Hello, is saying goodbye to show business. That and more is next on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Amy Held. Former President Donald Trump's criminal sentencing is now delayed until after the election. NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports.
New York Judge Juan Merchan has decided to push back Trump's sentencing for his hush money criminal conviction to November 26th, a few weeks after Election Day. In his decision, Merchan said that the sentencing would be moved to avoid any appearance that the legal process has been or seeks to affect the 2024 presidential election. In May, Trump became the first former or sitting president to be convicted of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. The records were the ledgers, invoices, and pay stubs used to conceal $130,000 payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels to influence the 2016 presidential contest. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, New York.
The campaign for Vice President Kamala Harris says it raised $361 million in August, what it calls the best grassroots fundraising month in presidential history, and nearly triple what the Trump campaign brought in last month. It's an indicator that the money that began pouring in after President Biden dropped out in July is not slowing. Polling shows the race remains extremely tight. The Palestinian Ministry of Health says the Israeli military shot dead a 26-year-old American in the West Bank. Ayşenur Ezge Ege had dual Turkish citizenship. She was reportedly protesting against Israeli settlements. The U.S. is asking Israel to investigate. Here's Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
The most important thing to do is to gather the facts, and that's exactly what we're in the process of doing. And we are intensely focused on getting those facts. And any actions that we take are driven by the facts.
The Israeli military says it's looking into reports its troops opened fire at a, quote, instigator of violent activity. Gaza's health ministry says more than 40,000 people have been killed over the past 11 months of war. This week, one photo of the dead stood out. It shows the body of a young girl covered in a white shroud wearing pink roller skates. NPR's Aya Batrawi reports.
Tala Abu Ajwa had just gone downstairs to play with her brother when her father says an Israeli airstrike hit their building in Gaza City on Tuesday. The shrapnel killed her and 8 neighbors, including other children. Her photo at the morgue, still wearing her pink skates, has gone viral on social media. Her father, Hossam Abu Ajwa, tells NPR he tried to keep his 4 kids safe throughout the war. The Israeli military says it takes precautions to limit civilian deaths in its targeting of Hamas. It did not respond to NPR's request on why this residential building was hit. Abu Ajwa says Tala told him the day before she died how she dreamt of becoming a dentist and going back to school again. Aya Botrawi, NPR News.
It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. State health officials have announced that an additional human case of Eastern equine encephalitis and one additional human case of West Nile virus have been confirmed here in Massachusetts. Officials say both cases are in men in their 70s. One man was exposed to Triple E in central Middlesex County, bringing the total number of cases in Massachusetts this year to 3. The other man was exposed to West Nile virus in southern Middlesex County, marking 7 cases of West Nile virus in Massachusetts so far this year. A former mafia hitman pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter today for killing South Boston gangster James Whitey Bulger at a federal prison in West Virginia in 2018. Under the plea agreement, 57-year-old Foitos Freddy Gaius of Springfield pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter and an assault charge. In exchange, the government dropped the murder charges and they carry a mandatory life sentence, and they sentenced him instead to 25 years. The sentence, meanwhile, is largely symbolic because Gaius is currently serving a life sentence for his role in the 2003 murders of 2 mobsters from Springfield, Mass. The government previously dropped murder charges against 2 other inmates who were indicted along with Gaius 2 years ago. They pleaded guilty to the lesser charges. If you're headed to the beach over the next day or two, be very careful. The National Weather Service has issued a rip current warning for the entire Massachusetts coast and a high surf advisory for Cape Cod and Nantucket. 73 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
I am no longer happy in my career.
Everyday people.
How am I going to make a change?
Personal stories.
And one glorious September morning, that's where I see it. The bookshop is for sale. I opened the doors to the bookstore for the first time on February 3rd, 2020. And then a few weeks later, COVID hits. I have to figure out another way to make this work.
Stories from the stage. Sunday night at 7, only on GBH 89.7.
Welcome to the Culture Show, live at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen.
I'm Callie Crossley.
And I'm Edgar B. Herwick III.
It's time for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Here's what it sounded like.
Many Boston business owners can raise a glass. The city is on the verge of adding a lot more liquor licenses for bars and restaurants.
The sparkling drinks are just dandy, the chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Dancing with the Stars is full of surprises. He mastered the pommel horse, and now he's ready to master the dance floor. Get ready for Olympian Steven Nedorazin. This next NFL player has the moves in the end zone.
By Amendola for the touchdown.
It's wide receiver Danny Amendola. She made international headlines as a convicted felon.
You think you know me, but you don't.
Now she's determined to make the greatest comeback of all time. The jury rules it's time for Anna Delvey to hit the dance floor.
British singer Adele has announced she'll be taking a long break from music and performing. The best-selling musician will be taking time away from her career after the conclusion of her run of Las Vegas shows.
Oscar winners Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore captivated the Venice Film Festival with their latest film, The Room Next Door, which received an exceptional 18-minute standing ovation, the longest at the festival so far.
Well, as you just heard, that wasn't the live audience at the BPL. That was the ever-clapping, still happening audience at the Venice Film Festival. Boston could be getting boozier with the legislature moving to make it easier and much less expensive for businesses to acquire liquor licenses. Not to mention, could the era of the brown-bagged booze be over as the city considers making open container zones a reality? From there, in a major plot twist, it's a Hollywood ending for West Newton Cinema, which has been saved from demolition. Then, is Dancing with the Stars now in the business of choreographing a comeback for convicts? And Adele fans are rolling in the depths of despair with news that she's breaking up with us for a long time. Well, first up, is it time for some business owners to raise a glass? After years of debate, lawmakers on Beacon Hill have finally come to an agreement on a dramatic expansion of available liquor licenses in Boston. This is very significant because this expands our food and culture sector far and wide here, because there's been this problem in the city of Boston for a very long time where you find a lot of liquor licenses concentrated in one area of the city, predominantly where we are around the Boston Public Library right now in the South End and Back Bay, Beacon Hill, and less in other parts of the city. And it's really hard to have a viable, successful restaurant if you don't have a liquor license so that you can help have that full dining experience.
Yeah, 75 to 80% make up the profit margins with alcohol if you have a restaurant that serves alcohol. So you can see what happens if you don't. There's a 20% markup on alcohol. This is a long struggle in Boston for those communities that have been shut out of the liquor license business. And the liquor licenses are very expensive. There've only been a few assigned to various places. Now, with the opening up of it, some will be assigned to very specific zip codes. So there should be, I say should be because this is about the 5th iteration of trying to fix this, no way for some communities to be overlooked, which is the point.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and there's a few things that it looks like that they're doing here, in part because they've learned from the history of what's happened before. So, like, as you said, Callie, I mean, some neighborhoods don't have any. I think it's Senator Liz Miranda who's been fighting this fight here in the Bay State for this. She points out that, for example, Blue Hill Avenue probably has less than a handful of liquor licenses. The whole area around Mattapan maybe has 1, maybe 2. And what's happened over time is that as places like the Seaport have come up where there's a lot of money and there's a lot of investment and there's big companies that have the money to be able to buy the liquor licenses that are available, they all start concentrating to a certain area. So one of the things that really strikes me as interesting in this is that, so for one, of these 225 new liquor licenses, they're going to a bunch of different zip codes, 13 different zip codes. They're going to roll them out over a course of years. But some of them will remain restricted in perpetuity to those zip codes. So if you look at the past and you say, okay, well, what would happen is somebody who has a liquor license, their business doesn't work, they're going to sell it to the highest bidder. It leaves an area of Mattapan. It leaves Blue Hill Avenue to go to the Seaport. That will not be allowed with at least some of these. So this will be interesting to watch over time whether this transforms these. It's enormous.
It's huge.
Well, of course, because where you have fine dining, it doesn't even have to be fine dining, any kind of dining, where you have a liquor license, where you have the full dining experience, it changes that community. Not only does it lubricate the people, but it lubricates the community in terms of energy and the businesses, the economy. Of course, the economy can grow, and it is a fundamental part of neighborhoods. What I also appreciate about this is that there are earmarks for outdoor spaces, community hubs, theaters, and nonprofit organizations, and we've already seen places like, actually they are moving over here, so this would apply to them as well. The American Repertory Theater, for instance, in Cambridge, moving over to Alston, building a new space, wanting to have a community space so that they're more than just a theater, but they're a gathering space. So this allows other organizations of like minds to do this too. And so it is an impetus.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say enough about how much it lays the foundation for economic growth. I mean, that is huge.
Yeah.
And to have that spread across neighborhoods that have been struggling for so long to get it, that's, you'll see the numbers go up.
Yeah, and also I think it's important to note, hopefully, fingers crossed, also not just growth in these neighborhoods, but growth by businesses from people in those neighborhoods, mom and pop shops, restaurants. If the idea is that the only people who can afford liquor licenses are giant chain restaurants that have the money to be able to buy them, well, I guess that's okay for the city, but I think a lot of people really want that experience of a neighborhood being unique unto itself. Right. I mean, Boston likes to call itself a city of neighborhoods, so hopefully this helps with the independently owned mom and pop restaurants as well.
So while we're talking about this, let's try this one on for size and see how people feel about this. That our own Soraya Wintersmith here at GBH reported out this week that under consideration for the city of Boston is also open container social district zones, where you would designate certain areas where you can walk down the street or in a little neighborhood or maybe a block and have your liquor just like you might do in Bourbon Street. Maybe that's not the best example to compare Boston to New Orleans and the bead throwing and the late night revelry. But this is something that's taken hold in Michigan, Minnesota, North Carolina, Indiana, Ohio, and Kansas, and they're finding success. I think about the St. Patrick's Day parade here, and I wonder, or the rallies, and I wonder, is this a good thing for Boston that we can have open container zones?
I think this is probably going to be dead on arrival. This is what I think. I think it would be kind of fun, but there would have to be some different kinds of restrictions than in New Orleans. New Orleans is just a free flow, and people have a ball there, but it's a rowdy situation on any given night in the French Quarter.
Or day sometimes.
Oh, well, that's true, too.
Exactly.
That is true.
I mean, I don't think anybody, I don't think we're going to be confusing Boston for New Orleans anytime soon. I mean, I do think what I like about this is that it's at least showing a willingness. I mean, how long, Jared, how long have you been here? Callie, how long have you been here? How long has the conversation gone on?
Since there were cobblestones and horse-drawn carriages.
How long has the conversation gone on in this city about we need to do more to get nightlife going in this city? There's all of these colleges, and yet we continue to hear like there's this sort of there's this push and pull between this, and I think this city has grappled with this for a long time. At least the fact that this is being considered makes me think, okay, we're being open to some creative ideas about how to light a fire in this city a little bit when it comes to nightlife. So
don't hold your breath.
No, I don't. I'm with you, Callie. I'm with you. I don't think it's going to happen. I will be shocked if it happens.
Same here, although what does give me pause is that Governor Healey, who was just here a couple of minutes ago, by the way, of course, on Boston Public Radio for Ask the Governor, recently signed the Cocktails to Go measure into law for restaurants. So I think we are inching toward this. Our puritanical roots here, I think we're maybe opening up a little bit. And do we really want Ohio and Kansas beating us? I don't know.
Well, I mean, we're one of only, 5 states that doesn't have happy hour? Let's go.
Yeah.
Although any restaurant owner you'll talk to or bartender will say, we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
So let's let that go.
Well, we'll definitely ruin whatever they give us. That's for sure.
All right. Well, here's a really good story that we're very happy to be talking about. In a plot right out of the movies, West Newton Cinema has been saved. I know that we talked about this on the show at one point, and we have been spending a lot of time, actually, delightfully talking about the rise of independent film theaters in our region. And you see what's happened with the Coolidge and West Newton Cinema. A huge cry went up when that property had been bought by a developer. By the way, this is a long-time independent cinema going back to the 1930s, Art Deco style. When that property had been bought by a developer, it looked like it would be demolished, but a group rallied in that city, again, realizing the arts are an economic engine. This is a hub for us. And the developer worked with them and said, if you can buy it outright, we'll sell it to you for $5 million. They got the money, and they just announced, they sent me an email this week saying we bought the theater. So this is over for it.
Let's like a raw for the anonymous benefactor who I'd love to know.
Do we know who this anonymous benefactor that?
No, I'm looking at you to see if you know. You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay, I think that's wonderful, though.
I think it's great, and you know what? I keep finding myself thinking about the fact that part of the reason why I think this is able to happen is because it has happened around here, right? So when you talk about the Somerville Theater and the Brattle and the Coolidge Corner, it's a little bit like when Roger Bannister was the first person to run the mile in under 4 minutes, right? About a month later, somebody else ran the mile in under 4 minutes. A year later, 3 people in the same race did it. Once you can visualize that it can happen, it becomes easier to happen. And I think the fact that in this area, you have these other organizations that have laid the groundwork that show how these can work as independent cinemas, as great economic engines for their neighborhoods, it makes it easier to raise the money in West Newton to say, you know what, we want this here for our community too.
And for the community, here's a taste of what they'll do, because we had Elizabeth Heilig, who is the president of the West Newton Cinema Foundation, on the Culture Show last May, and this was right after they had received that $5.2 million anonymous donation that Callie's going to unmask at some point. And
get on that, Callie.
I asked her about what their programming would look like.
The programming will be centered on film, but we really want to create a lot of in-person, lively, interactive events that are going to get people off their couches and get them to come in and mingle with one another and remember why it's really so fantastic to go see movies together.
So that probably means actors and directors coming in, filmmakers, but maybe chefs, and just having community conversations.
Do we know what the liquor license situation is in Newton?
No, we should know. That would be interesting. I just want to point out they draw 50,000 people. That was without, this burst of new money. So I'm just really looking forward to seeing what they can do. I think all of us may have done sessions over there, but I did one on a Sunday afternoon. I just couldn't imagine it'd be me, the moderator, and a couple other, friends I'd made go. And there were 200 people there.
Yeah.
So it's a place, it's so much love for the theater as a community space. So it's bigger than doing just movies. So I'm very excited about it for them.
And I'll just remind you that when they do the handprints in front of the theater, like the Man's Chinese Theater,
Yeah.
that mine should be there, because that's where the little Jared saw his first film, was at the West
Amazing.
Newton Cinema. It occurred to me later, too, that I also saw E.T. there. I mean, what fundamental film do you want to see?
the first film?
The first film, I don't even know what it was called. It was some Raggedy Ann and Andy animated film. That was the first memory. And the second one was going to see E.T. and seeing my mom be very sad. And me not completely comprehending why
Not
she was
quite
so
getting
sad.
it,
I didn't
yeah.
put two and two together.
Yeah.
I just wanted candy, I think, coming out of that one.
Well, yeah, the peanut butter M&Ms.
Yeah.
The
Yes,
the Reese's Pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Reese's Pieces.
Oh, well, that's great news. I love
It is
good
great news. We're very happy for them. Well, coming up is Dancing with the Stars going out on a limb for lawbreakers. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
GBH News investigates.
A state report showed 85% of the small claims court docket last year was filed for debt collection.
These courts were created to allow individuals to have their day in court without process.
But critics say
These sophisticated companies are using it to steamroll people.
companies come to court with lawyers, while for many low-income consumers,
I don't have a legal representation. I can't fight the system.
I'm Jennifer McKim. Find this story at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Vermont Cheese Council, hosting Vermont Cheese Week this weekend through the 15th, a week-long festival featuring cheese camps, dinners, tastings, and mingling with cheesemakers in and around Vermont. Learn more at vtcheese.com. And Carr Financial Group, independent fiduciaries committed to guiding investors through the changing economy with wealth management, financial, and retirement planning services. Consultations can be scheduled at carrfinancial.com.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, as the fall semester begins, Harvard students against the war in Gaza will meet with the university's president. Governor Healey will be talking about new details when it comes to the direction of offshore wind in Massachusetts. Plus a conversation with filmmaker Lana Wilson about her new documentary, Look Into My Eyes, which takes viewers inside the world of psychic readings. That's all coming up at 4 on GBH 89.7.
This is The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, here with co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Herwick III. That is not our theme music, nor do we want it to be, because if you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, and it includes Dancing with the Stars. That's the music we just heard, a show that is now doing the Foxtrot with felons. Okay, so I think about this, and I think of, I can't, I'm just...
You're turning red.
I'm turning red. I'm like Madeline Kahn in Clue, heaving flames from the top of my head. I can't understand. All right, I should back up.
Yeah.
They just announced.
Take a breath.
Take a breath. All of their dancers have been announced. Danny Amendola, fabulous. Even Eric Roberts, Tori Spelling, fabulous. Of course,
Pommel House guy.
the Pommel Horse guy from Massachusetts.
The dad from Family Matters.
Yeah, the dad from Family Matters. And then Anna Sorokin, who, of course, is a convicted felon who is under house arrest in New York, who is wearing an ankle bracelet, which they tried to highlight in their picture of her as they were advertising this new season. This, of course, is a marketing ploy, and we understand what ABC is doing and what Dancing with the Stars is doing, and to some degree we're feeding into it by talking about it right now. But I think that this is absolutely outrageous, that there are so many deserving people. And what started out, okay, now the rage is building again. What started out as a really good, interesting show about dance and looking at people of average ability in dance and how they can move forward over the course of a season so that it could be fun and you could kind of identify with them, has turned into this just salacious, let's prop up somebody who doesn't deserve propping up, who was out of jail before she was supposed to be. She was given 4 to 12 years in prison in 2019, released in 2022, and this is for bilking people and businesses out of hundreds of thousands of dollars, now gets a platform and basically is getting rich off of being a criminal.
She's also built her friends, just to add to it, just so we know. Here's her quote, because not only is she doing this, she started a podcast, okay? And her quote is, so many people become famous for bad things, and we're able to kind of segue it into something different. Are you kidding me? ABC, I mean, I realize we're in a time of no shame. There's just like no shame.
Yeah.
And there's an acceptance of people doing outrageous kinds of things and everybody kind of shrugging their shoulders going, okay, but this is a family show. So let me start there. This is a family show and you're promoting someone who is acknowledged by her actions as has been documented, but also she knows she did it.
Yeah.
So come on.
So there's so much going on in this story.
Wait, are you going to be measured about this?
A little bit. I am. For one, let's look at what's happening with Dancing with the Stars. This is their 33rd season. So
let's have criminals?
No, I'm not saying let's have criminals. I'm saying that 33 seasons, and as you know, producers are sitting there, they don't want to just sort of spin out the same thing over and over again. So there is this natural pull toward the more salacious or the more outrageous over a course of time. So that's a little bit of the underpinning. Now let's get to Anna. On the one hand, her crimes, which she went to jail for all of her crimes, being a con artist and bilking people out of money. Part of me a little bit is kind of like, I don't know, it was like mostly hotels and rich people and
her friends.
Wait, and her friend. So the bit with her friend I think is a little bit more problematic. Yeah. But I sort of feel like, look, if you went to jail and you did your time, okay, maybe you get a chance. The issue I have here, this is where it's a real issue for me. The reason she is currently wearing the ankle monitor is because she's in an immigration fight. She is not an American citizen, and they are looking, she is right now in the courts because they have said she has overstayed her visa and she's supposed to leave the country. And the fact that there are so many people who are caught up in the immigration system, which we all know right now in this country is problematic. And not only is this what she's fighting, but somehow within a week, she's able to get dispensation from ICE to leave New York and go to LA to film this. That is the piece that I have
for a long time. And for people who want to hear her talk about herself, this is from a 2021 interview with 60 Minutes Australia. The reporter Liam Bartlett found out that Sorokin is totally unrepentant, as she boldly believes there's nothing wrong with making it by faking it.
The whole Anna Delvey Foundation, your whole business, was just this house of cards. It wasn't real, Anna.
So many businesses are just a house of cards. You just don't know about it. I don't see this case as a crime at all. How about that? What was that so criminal that I've done? I just don't feel guilty, and that's it. There isn't much to explain.
And we will explain for people who don't know the story, which was turned into a Netflix special for which she already has been paid $320,000 for her story. So she's already making money off of being...
Although apparently in New York, she wasn't allowed to get all of that because in New York
she got $300,000?
Yeah, I'm sure she got most of it. But in New York, you're not allowed to quote-unquote profit from your crime.
But she was running up all these bills at hotels, restaurants, from her friends, not paying her friends back because she wanted to give the illusion that she was a socialite so that she could start this club. And she could only do that by keeping up appearances, which meant stealing money from all of these other entities, which is why she does have some favorability among some, because they think, well, she was just sticking it to the rich and people who could afford it anyway. But again, Edgar, you brought it home by making the point that how does she get to have this special dispensation, and now ABC is complicit in this show.
And on top of that, when you have run out of ideas doing the same thing, that's what's called innovation. I look at a show like MasterChef. I'm just going to pick one out of the air.
Yeah.
Okay? They did something this season, generations. Had different generations competing against each other.
Yeah.
It's the same format. You figure out a way to do your same thing differently that draws in a different audience. I'm sorry, that's what they do. That's what they should be doing. Instead, they're doing this.
I hear you.
I mean, it is disgusting, and it's as I said, a family show. And I used to enjoy watching it. The little stories and the different people. I can't. And Pommel Horse Guy has to be in the same.
Yeah.
Pure Olympian champion has to be sullied by her presence. I mean, I can't. I'm beside. And on top of that, they started the downhill climb, we should say, or the devolvement of the show when they had the guy who lied, who was former President Trump's press secretary,
Sean Spicer.
Thank you, who was a big liar. All lies acknowledged. I'm not making it up. These are documented, and they put him on the show.
Well, I mean,
come on.
They have been casting somewhat controversial figures for some time now. I'm just saying this is sort of. They have obviously kind of crossed a Rubicon here. They've gone a little further than they have in the past. But there is evidence that they were moving in this direction for a number of seasons, as you just pointed out.
I think it's a reflection of this moment we're in. We don't need to talk about all of it. We're exalting the criminal behavior, and we're making it acceptable. I think this is what fundamentally troubles me so much, is that this makes it acceptable. When you put this on a network show and you put it before people like this is average and this is deserving.
And she'll get more.
I think there is something to be said for the fact that her crimes were that of a con artist. There is a certain fascination with that sort of a crime. People can look at it and say it was victimless, or people can look at it and almost be impressed by it. It's sort of don't criticize the player, criticize the game. Mm-hmm. And so I think that our culture does have a long-standing fascination with that particular type of crime.
You're probably right on that one, I think.
All right, let's take a little moment of wellness here.
Yeah.
Well, that was hello, but it's a goodbye from Adele, who told us this week that she is going to be taking a long time off. I think this is really compelling, actually, but that Adele is grounded enough to know that she does what she does, and she knows what she loves, and she knows when she doesn't love it. And she came out this week at a concert in Munich. In fact, let me not speak for her. Here's what she had to say about saying goodbye during her Munich residency last week.
I have really enjoyed performing for nearly 3 years now, which is the longest I've ever done, and probably the longest I will ever do. And I have 10 shows left after this, back in my residency. But after that, I will not see you for an incredibly long time, and I will hold you dear in my heart for that whole next of my break, and I will fantasize about these shows and any shows that I've done over the last 3 years.
And what she's meaning, she's been doing this Las Vegas residency, weekends with Adele, and she's talked in the past about being uncomfortable with performing. She loves to sing, but she also, as she has talked about, loves to have a private life. And she has a son. She may want to have a larger family, and she wants to tend to her private life right now. And unlike many artists, she thinks it's okay to step away from your career and not worry about the consequences.
Well, first of all, she's Adele. So whenever she comes back, we're all going to run and go see her. So that's the first thing. I'm quite taken with her statement that her tank is quite empty, that she acknowledges that she has to have a time of replenishment, or else she can't bring to us the artistry that we enjoy, because she can't give it. She says she doesn't even sing at home now.
Yeah.
She's so daggone tired. My prediction, she's getting married and having a kid.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And
yeah.
I think, who knows? I would imagine. The thing is that on the one hand, it's easy. I think it's easy to look at these artists and be like, well, they're probably millionaires, and wouldn't it be nice to be able to step away? Like I think about this about sports players, It's like they're like 35 years old and they can't do it anymore, and they're like, I just don't have the passion for the game anymore. I'm like, well, when I was 35, I didn't have the passion for work that I used to have, but I still had to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also, I think that performing in the way she has been is particularly grueling.
Yes.
It's kind of unnatural to do it over and over and over and over again. I mean, you listen to. I mean, I think about like the Beatles, for example, right? They stopped touring in 1966. From 62 to 66, that's 4 years that they were all over the world, and it like completely blew them apart, Well, and they couldn't do it anymore.
Right. If you think about closer to home, people, the big stars that particularly who do the Broadway shows, they have limits because they can't do that show every night the same way, and it takes them out. So I appreciate her saying that. I hope, all the fans will give her space. I mean, when you're public facing, you're always on, even when you're. So this sounds like she's going to retreat someplace where you can't even have access to be, drooling over her out in the public. She'll just be somewhere quiet.
I think her tank will fill back up.
Well, and here she talked about it in 22 on the Graham Norton show, which, by the way, is one of my favorite shows.
I'm with you.
If you can have access to streaming, Graham Norton show out of England is fantastic. But here she is discussing her tendency to withdraw from music for extended periods and why.
I definitely will vanish again, but I'm trying to make a really conscious effort to stop being so anal with my privacy. Saying that, I'm still private though, so I don't really. But I'm trying to not always be two completely different versions of myself because it's exhausting.
Do you disappear to recharge?
Yeah, and it takes me a while.
Yeah.
It really takes me a while. It takes me about 3 years, and then I've got to rev myself up to go into the studio, and then it takes me a good year and a bit to finish an album.
Also because I think that she's a true artist and that she is an observer of life. And she has to go back into life in order to be an observer. Otherwise, you're not on this planet anymore. How can you possibly have any music that people are going to relate to when they know that you're just out in the world being super famous every day of your life? So I think not only is she recognizing that, but she's resisting this constant demand to see our people on social media, that you've got to have your whole life presented to us every day on Instagram or any other platform, and this is how you cultivate your celebrity. I guess you can argue that her celebrity was established well before this, so that this wasn't necessarily her world. But she, again, yes, I take your point, Callie. She's Adele. If Beyonce or Dolly Parton were to go to do this, we'd say, we'll be ready for you when you come back. But at the same time, she resists those temptations, and not a lot of people can, I think.
I also want to point out the maturity of saying, yes, as you said, she can make more money.
Yeah.
She can make more money. If she decided my going away is just one concert every 3 months, she could make $1 bazillion that way.
Totally.
She's like saying, I'm just out. And I got money. And by the way, she's about to marry the guy who's got plenty more money. So, they're not having to struggle to pay the rent. So, why not take time for yourself?
I find myself thinking about, people talk, I have a lot of friends who like to talk about, are you an extrovert or are you an introvert, right? And people often, I think, confuse that with being shy or being outgoing, and they're very different. One of the ways to look at it, as it's been told to me, is that generally speaking, an introvert, their batteries get filled up when they're in the quiet or one-on-one with someone or alone. An extrovert gets energized by doing something like performing in front of a crowd. And so I could sit here and speculate, maybe she's a bit of an introvert. And she said that. She's not a natural performer. She's good at it. She knows she's good at it. But maybe it's just, it sort of takes from her to do that. And so she's recognizing that about herself.
And speaking of the financials, Edgar, you were making the point yesterday that there is also a reason that we don't see more bands, for instance.
Yeah, because I think about the fact that a lot of times what happens with a band is that whether it's one of the people is the songwriter or the lead guitarist or the singer, they end up being able to make money beyond the band in other ways. But the bass player or the drummer, they don't have that kind of financial security. So once the band goes away, if they haven't been on the road for a couple years, you often have the drummer or the bass player or the lesser known people in the band saying, "Hey guys, can we do a reunion tour because I don't have any money left in the bank."
Right.
So, they're not in that same sort of financial situation maybe that she is. And it sounds like she's at least secure enough to step away for now.
I will point out she doesn't have any merch.
Really?
Really?
Just albums. I've never seen an Adele t-shirt. Have you?
I bet I could get my hands on one.
Maybe at the concert or something.
Well, yeah, but like a line. Like Beyonce has 5 different clothing lines.
Right.
I'm just saying. Yeah. It's just interesting.
She doesn't have merch, but she does have sciatica, so that's a part of it too. She's talked about this. All right, well, next, our film festival is putting the "Oh No" in the standing O with some ovations. Here we go again, lasting nearly 20 minutes. I think as this is the time of film festivals, especially in the fall. Cannes happens in the spring, and then Venice is happening now, and all of these film festivals, especially in Europe, happen. And when the stars are there and their film finishes, there is an ovation that happens sometimes as long as 20 minutes. We were looking at some of the listings, and it was 11 minutes for the new Daniel Craig film because he was there. A 7-minute ovation. Can you imagine having to listen to this ovation that we've been listening to for just a minute now for 17 minutes?
This is nonsense.
It is.
8 minutes for the Angelina Jolie film where she's playing Maria Callas. These are all films that are going to be headed our way. And this has just turned into a thing. It's just people are doing it. Is there any reason in your life that you would want to applaud for 17 minutes?
Mm-mm. No, I mean, unless somebody had done something heroic.
Unless it's for me, Callie says.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, because I was thinking about myself and how contagious it is. So sometimes somebody gets up and then you feel like, well, I guess I'll add to it. But 17 minutes worth of adding to it? No. And I point out that this piece was mentioning that the George Clooney film that people kind of had I like it, only got 4 minutes. Which to me seems...
Which is insane.
Yeah.
4 minutes is 4 minutes too long.
It's long. So I think people are caught up in the moment. There is some speculation that a few people have put ringers in the room to keep it going.
Which is not a new thing, by the way. I remember we had Jane Eaglin, the Grammy-winning opera star, on a culture show a while back talking about it. It's called clackers. And this goes back centuries where opera stars in particular, so that they could basically move on to the next job by getting a lot of applause for their previous job, would hire people to be in the audience, the clackers, and then they would ring up the applause.
See, and
it carried all the way into her day on stage.
Wow.
This is where it becomes interesting to me, because now we can look at it as a psychological phenomenon, right? So let's imagine that there are at least some people in there, whether it be a PR person or somebody, with the film company that kind of knows at this point, because the press has really kind of gotten into this, and it's very clickbaity to be like 12-minute ovation.
Yes.
So this is kind of gotten out of control in the last few years, I feel like. But it is interesting to think about, okay, so you're in this room, somebody keeps clapping, you're like, okay, I'm done, but the person next to you still clapping, and then somebody over here is like, how long are you going to go for? I mean, how many of these people in the room actually want to be clapping this long? I would guess almost none of them. But it's like some sort of weird psychology that takes over when it's happening around.
Well, here's the question to the two of you. Would you be inspired to keep clapping?
No.
I wouldn't. I think I would give up, and I'll tell you why, because I know that I resist the urge when I'm at live theater often to do the standing ovation thing, because that has gotten out of control.
Let's bring it home and talk about that, where I think all of us are in a lot of theaters a lot of the time, and we see a lot of good productions, but I think a standing ovation, at least historically, was for an exceptional production. Not even a very good production, but an exceptional production.
That's right.
But now we're in this moment where basically, I would say almost every single piece I go to, people stand up at the end to applause. Now, here's the frustrating part, because people, maybe if they've seen me in the theater, they'll think I'm a hypocrite for what I just said, that I wouldn't keep applauding.
Stand up?
Because I end up standing only because I'm looking at butts at this point, where I would rather be looking at the stage, because there's something often happening during the curtain call on stage, so I have to rise up to see it, and I should have a sign saying, not rising because I think, not that I don't want to give them the support, but it should be something exceptional, right?
I know. But I mean, people do kind of look at you if you stay seated. I have done that a couple
I've done
times.
it a few times too.
It's true. But it's the nature. Look, it's not a lot, but it's a little bit like I was saying with the Dancing with the Stars thing. There's a natural inflation. Every floor becomes a ceiling, every ceiling becomes a floor, right? And so once people start kind of saying, okay, we're going to stand all the time, then you look like, it comes a point where it shifts and you look like the jerk by not standing.
I will say this. It is proven to be in musicals or music concerts that if you keep applauding, they'll come out and do another song.
Yeah.
So that.
Well, that's another one though. They build that into the set list now.
Well, that's
so
true.
The encore is like it happens in every show. The encore happens.
Well, and I would say I was thinking about this morning, and knowing we were going to talk about this. I remember there was this great moment with Jagged Little Pill when it started here in Cambridge at the American Repertory Theatre, that people were so taken by Lauren Patton's performance of You Ought to Know that they rose up after that number in the show. This wasn't at the end. This was in the middle of the show. So what a special moment.
Right.
That people are moved in the moment and they do that, but then it became a thing. Or like you said, it became a thing, so that then every subsequent performance, because people had heard about it, everybody, including the one I went to by opening night, that was the standard thing, and they just rose up, and then it's not special anymore.
Right, no.
And I would venture a guess we've all been at some performance of some kind where a real, true, spontaneous, whether it be a standing or an applause where they weren't necessarily like waiting for them happens, and that really is an exceptional thing to be a part of.
And I have also been at a situation at a music concert where it's been a grumpy band, and they're like, you can stand out there all night, but I'm not coming back. And I didn't build it into the set list.
Good for them. Good for them.
Adele told me it's time to go home.
Right.
All right, well, coming up, the blacklist expands to include unpublished works of fiction. That and more is next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The history of busing in Boston is often framed as a black and white affair, but it wasn't just that.
I wish that they could have done a lot better educating the kids from China.
This is the busing story that played out from Chinatown to the North End.
5 school committee members, all white, sat up there like they were God.
Where Chinese parents had to fight for their voices to be heard.
By the time the Chinese parent went up to read their letter, 3 of them got up and left.
I'm Philip Martin.
Find the story now at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Cambridge School of Culinary Arts in Porter Square, offering teen and adult recreational cooking and baking workshops, series, and cooking couples classes for culinary enthusiasts. CambridgeCulinary.com. And M&M Skylights, servicing Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Their team is part of the Velux Skylight Specialist Network and is committed to helping improve the air quality in your home or business. You can learn more and schedule a consultation at mmskylights.com.
Europe's economic future will depend on attracting more migrants. That's according to experts and many government officials. But lots of European voters see migration as a problem. They want more restrictions on cross-border movement. We hear the fraught and deeply political conversation about migration in Europe next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Herwick III. We were just talking about ovations. I will point out that nobody here in the library is standing for us. We applaud you for that.
There it is. Thank you so much.
Well, if you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes The Blacklist, a platform for unproduced screenplays, is expanding to include fiction books. So if people don't know what this is, The Blacklist was founded nearly 20 years ago by Franklin Leonard, and it was a way to get screenplays before the studios and the producers to get them made into films if they like them. So that way you didn't have to go through the traditional studio system if you didn't have the luck and or access. More than 400 screenplays on the Blacklist survey have been produced, including films like Spotlight, Slumdog Millionaire, and The King's Speech. He has decided to expand this and now move into publishing.
It's pretty interesting and great, I would say. We've seen the success they've had with these unpublished films, some of which were Slumdog Millionaire. Imagine not having that. Right. I mean, yeah. Speaking of innovation, what an inventive, exciting movie. So The King's Speech, I mean, that's another one. So that was in a slush pile, nothing was ever gonna happen. And then the Blacklist came along and they were able to identify. So it seems to be a win-win for both publishers and writers. The writers pay a monthly fee of $30 to put their novel-length, unpublished or self-published manuscript on the site. And then for $150, they can get a more expansive, very specific to their work, professional feedback, which is pretty good, 90 to 100 pages of their novel. I think that's excellent. And then if the publisher decides to buy whatever they see, then they don't even pay a fee. They pay a fee to be able to read some of this, go through what would have been called the slush pile at publishers' houses. But if they buy it, they don't have to pay a fee. I mean, this is great for everybody.
Well, one of the things, I mean, hearing you talk about it like this, Callie, one of the things I love about this is Franklin Leonard, he talks about this in business terms. Here's his quote. Right now, there are brilliant writers around the world who don't have access to high-quality, accountable feedback and whose work goes unseen for reasons entirely unrelated to how good it is. That is a massive market failure. I like that he's thinking, and he showed it with the Blacklist. I mean, the Blacklist has been around for 20 years. 50 Academy Awards have come, or something like that, have come out of films that came out of the Blacklist. So this is somebody who's looking not just from an artistic standpoint and saying, like, I want to make sure that good work is rising to the top, but also saying, like, we need to have a healthy marketplace when it comes to how these things get out into the wider world. And so for that, it's like 3 thumbs up from me.
Yeah, because the way the business works is that you need to get an agent. You need to get an agent with access to editors and to publishing houses. That's a really hard thing to do. They get so many unsolicited submissions. So I think that this is the great thing for the publishing houses too, is that you can go into the Blacklist and you can start to just comb through material without having any responsibility because nobody knows you're doing it. Right. It's maybe even more incentive because you want to be the one to find this gem. You want to be the one to find the Slumdog Millionaire. And I love the way you put that, Callie. That, imagine that without that not in the world. So expand that. Imagine all the books that we should be reading right now that we're not, because also artists and writers aren't necessarily great business people. They're really good at what they do. But it shouldn't be totally on them to figure out how you're supposed to make your way through the morass of this whole publishing industry to find something, and then this can happen for you just by virtue of actually doing good work.
Exactly. I love it. Then I also love this Unpublished Novel Award, a $10,000 grant for authors of unpublished manuscripts in 7 genres. So you have a chance. You know, those people trying to write those books are living off the ramen noodles like 3 times a week. How about just, you know, upgrading to a bigger bowl with this $10,000 grant? And they have another working with another production company. If somebody sees something they want to turn to a film, this genre films, they will option an unpublished manuscript for 18 months.
Yeah, I was going to say, talking about smart business. So you have the screenplay world. We know a lot of screenplays come from books, so they're starting to put that together right out of the gate. It's great.
And here's a wonderful variation of this happening in Zimbabwe. This is one of my favorite stories of the week, where writers there who obviously don't have a lot of access because there are so many limitations in terms of money, in terms of access to publishers again, but they do have, somewhat limited, but they do have access to social media and the internet, and they're publishing books on WhatsApp.
I love it. This is great. What the story that we read, this particular author writes chapters while sitting in the marketplace because that's his other gig, and he sends out a chapter, and then if you want to buy the whole book, for another one of them, it's $2 because this, you know, these are not people with a lot of money, but builds up audience. He's able, I mean, he has to be pretty good to hook the audience every time the chapter comes out. In this particular case, this one author is writing in the Shona language, so there's an extra incentive for people in his neighborhood. But more to the point, WhatsApp is pretty common, even in spaces that don't have other kinds of resources. So this has just become almost like Netflix. That's how I would describe it.
Well, I was going to say one of the things that's really interesting. I mean, there's a number of things that's interesting about this. One being that, you know, like as you say, they're being entrepreneurial and trying to find ways, even when there's not a lot of money swimming around, to make some money. So like that's cool. It's sort of turning to something that Netflix finds works, which is an episodic something or other.
Which I hate, but go ahead.
And kind of going back to a long literary tradition. I mean, people point to the fact that a lot of Dickens novels were released sort of a chapter at a time in publications, and that's what's happening here. And you know, you're building this audience. But I also think it's really interesting to look at this from an artistic standpoint. He's writing these on WhatsApp. They are being read on WhatsApp. So in some ways, you can kind of look at this as its own sort of art form emerging, right? I mean, it's not necessarily intended, although I hope somebody does publish some of these books in a traditional format. The experience that he's having writing it and the people who are having reading it are very unique to the platform. And I think that's really interesting too. It's just, people continue to invent whatever is given to them. Whatever the tools, people will find a way to invent with it.
And already there's been one great success story with an Iranian Kurdish refugee writing from detention in Australia, writing their memoir. People saw it, picked it up, and this is moving forward. And they ended up landing a really great literary prize, too. They came with money to this. And again, it's just by virtue of your creating good work. Well, that is our lightning sound, which means it's time for our lightning round. These are the stories that caught our attention this week. Callie, what's yours?
People may know that Isaac Hayes wrote a song that was very popular called Walk On By. That was the tone of the Isaac Hayes family estate when they spoke to the Trump people to say, stop using Hold On, I'm Coming, which is a song that Isaac Hayes has written. They'd asked them to do it. They didn't do it because, as we know, former President Trump just uses whatever. They took them to court, and they've gotten a preliminary injunction. And they're like, stop it. And the family has said, we were not kidding around. And other bands that have complained about this out in the open are now looking at this as a way, we're going to court to do this. And the son says, listen, I'm trying not to make this a political situation, but we don't like some of the character of the man, and that's not what our father would want. And stop it. Just stop. So they have to now.
Now they have to. Edgar, what's your story?
Yeah.
Well, if you think that, if you're one of those people who says, like, I feel like the pumpkin spice thing happens a little bit too early, well, you got nothing on Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro has decreed this week that in the country of Venezuela, Christmas will begin this year, Christmas on October 1st.
So this is something you can just decide.
Apparently in Venezuela you can. And it's kind of ridiculous, and at the same time we should note that this is very serious, because what's happening in Venezuela and why this is happening, there were elections in July. It's something like, I think they were in July. It was pretty clear to the United States and the international community that Nicolas Maduro did not win that election. He did not even come close to winning that election. However, in that country, it went to their Supreme Court, which is in his pocket. They have said he has won the election. And now, with a lot of civil unrest, a lot of people being arrested by Maduro and his people for going out and protesting this, he is trying to distract by saying, like, let's bring everybody together for Christmas starting October 1st. So it's a little bit of a cautionary tale when you sort of look down there and you think about the fact that this is election shenanigans and this is using things that people enjoy to try to, like, further your own personal needs and goals. Just kind of keep that in mind. But that's ridiculous.
So what's CVS's excuse then?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so my story. What's every parent's worst nightmare if you have a 4-year-old boy and you take that 4-year-old boy to a museum and you take that boy into the gallery where the pottery is not in glass cases? What's your worst fear? Well, that happened in a museum in Israel where a parent was walking through and they heard this crash and they thought, please don't let it be. Well, it was. And they turned around and their 4-year-old son had knocked over a 3,000-year-old pottery piece that was once used to hold wine or oil, which no longer holds anything. But here's the really great part of this story. This family, being in that part of the world, has been experiencing great trauma, of course, because of all of the bombing. So they were going to museum visits. This happened. Fortunately, the museum can they must have Gorilla Glue there, because the museum can actually put it back together. And they invited the family back because they didn't want to make this little boy feel horrible for what he did. He was just being curious and they didn't have a case. And so it kind of all's well that ends well, because they are able to put it back together, except we'll have a few cracks in it now. But just a lovely story.
Yeah, and now it's a better story for future generations.
And what if he becomes an artist?
Yeah, and in 500 years, the part of the story of that object is the fact that this story happened with this child. And that's kind of great in its own way.
It really
It did last 3,000 years before it was broken, because it's rare they pull an intact piece out. Well, that is all for this edition of The Ground, That's all for this edition of The Culture Show. Callie, what's coming up on Under the Radar?
We are looking at the 23rd anniversary of 9/11 and talking with 3 security experts about how we have had to rethink security since 9/11. One of them was a general who was in the room with Bush when it happened. And so it's very serious and very different than I would have thought about security. The second part is Arrow Street Arts, where everybody's talking about it. We're all excited about the launch of it, and we're focusing on the Boston History Company's performance as part of that festival to launch.
Fantastic. And what's happening with the Curiosity Desk?
Well, keep your eyes on the WGBH News YouTube channel. We have our latest episode dropping very soon. We all love epic journeys, and we follow the epic journey of the food once it goes down your garbage disposal. What happens then? We follow it all the way through the pipes.
Sounds great. And you can tune in on Monday for the story of a tapestry hundreds of feet long, nearly a decade in the making, and which tells the story of climate change change, from the Egyptians all the way to modern industry. If you want some homework over the weekend, you can see it at the Mass Art Museum in an exhibition about climate change. That museum is always free, by the way. And we'll also raise a glass to Boston Rum Week. Thanks today to the BPL technical and logistics crew, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, and Amanda Francis. And thanks to City Table, the Lenox Hotel, and the Newsfeed Cafe. Thank you to our non-standing / kind of standing audience giving us ovations here at the Boston Public Library. We really appreciate you being here. I'm Jared Bowen. Have an art-filled weekend.
Where's Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library!
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.